You know, Charles, the kazoo orchestra was so popular on the Christmas show that I figured we'd go with kazoo orchestra for this. Hello, Charles.
It's great to see you. It's the final show for us of this year, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. You know, the Very Corsi Christmas special has been hugely popular. I've been getting so many really nice emails from people, and the social engineers are jumping out of their skin to make counter-programming because they just can't deal not only with the clever comedic timing that you deliver, Charles, but on a serious note, the synergy of information between all those guests, I think it did everything I wanted it to do.
It was your idea, and it was a wonderful idea, and a lot of fun to do it. And you know, it was even a pleasure to go out to New Jersey, which is something you don't hear me say more than once every 10 years.
You don't hear too many people say that at all. But I thought it was important to do. 2020 was an important year for Dr. Corsi overcoming the malicious prosecution of Robert Mueller's special special counsel. And I didn't realize this, but when we did a segment, you know, with Mrs. Corsi prior to the main show, and they were talking about how the Christmas prior was destroyed by this. And it's really interesting to observe, Charles, because I think this is a very standard, extremely underhanded tactic of lawyers to, and they did it in Congress as well, to drop the flaming dog turd lunch bag on your doorstep right before Christmas. They did it to all of America so that
right.
People were there having their Christmas dinners, sitting around with family and everybody that they don't see for a year, arguing. I mean, my cousin didn't want his kids to even hear what I had to say about it. He didn't want to sway them.
Right.
But we'll watch MSNBC and CNN all day.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to my early years out of business school when I got out in 1980. And yeah, we were still fighting a hot war, a cold war with Russia, the Soviet Union and China, and things were rough. The economy was a mess thanks to Nimrod peanut farmer Carter and his absurd team, in quotes, of high-level cabinet officials. I mean, the world was a mess back then.
Yeah.
But at least inside this country, the government didn't have the type of power that it today has. Because of advances in technology and
surveillance, you mean?
Well, surveillance and the ability to change your credit decision, to seize your assets, to show up unannounced and
shut off your money,
shut up your social media, monitor your email. We've given tools that are way too powerful to people who like to spend time saying that so-and-so shouldn't be allowed to drink and so-and-so should only have so many sodas, and now you're going to send the bug-eyed barmaid into maybe be Bernie Sanders as vice president in 2024, God forbid.
That's
somebody who doesn't, in her own major, does not understand basic elements of her own major, yet has a degree from a serious university. And when she gets caught out, uses as her excuse, well, I don't know, I can't be expected to know everything. I mean, that's not the kind of person that you want to give all power to in a construct that seems to be the one so too many people are comfortable with. I mean, the idea of the American government was in the beginning that it would be limited. It was extremely limited in the first go-round of the Articles of Confederation. But I don't think any of us have signed up for the idea that we're going to take somebody and put him or her or them on a pedestal and let them control every aspect of your life and let them make every decision for you in their all-knowing wisdom. I mean, that's not what I signed up for. And I don't think it's what the mass of American humanity believes is the right thing to have. So, if we're going to go and allow people like that, I shouldn't use the word, so I will, moron, John Brennan, to go and be head of the CIA, somebody who, to say that he's not in the mainstream, I mean, he should not be outside the prison population of a high security prison, let alone, how did that guy get to be head of the CIA? To give people like that the kind of power they have, and, dopey James Comey and Robert Mueller at the FBI, these individual Congress people, Adam Schiff, who can go get your telephone records, without having a warrant to intervene in the process. I mean, we've come to a place where I think the American public on the right and the left actually will join hands and say, you know what? If history has shown us anything from 1989 forward, it is that bigger is not better, bigger bureaucracies are not better. Disruption is an important thing that has made lives actually a lot better across many industries that used to be tightly controlled. Pick telecom as one. And big government needs to be disrupted. This notion that we should surrender the important freedoms that were won through the course of 1776 through 1789, that we should surrender those to people who are quite willing to put their heel on your neck and push as hard as they can until you give them everything that you want. I mean, that is not what we want in this country, and there are too many examples of people behaving like that in both political parties, and even people like Bernie Sanders, who, last I checked, is not even a Democrat, but thinks that he should be the Democratic candidate for president.
He's an independent, right? I mean, he's a communist. People said that when I was like, oh, maybe Bernie Sanders, and I was like, that's ridiculous, but I'm now convinced that he is.
Communist. He's just a craziest. I mean, the guy's. I mean, I really think it would be sort of amusing, as I don't know if we could do this, if we could set up some sort of a race, where you have the Grand Prix and you have the Indianapolis 500. And what you do is you get those Zimmer frames, and we get the people who
Zimmer frames.
Those are those those walkers that people use, or unsteady on their feet. And you could have the various people who are 70 and up race those Zimmer frames in the background as we have the Democratic debate. It would be a lot more fun to watch that.
I found a walker, Charles.
That's a big walker.
Yeah, that goes with our previous episode.
But can you find a Zimmer frame? Well, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Zimmer?
Yeah.
Sure. I'll take a look here.
It would be. I mean, I suppose it would be pretty funny to have. Smaller versions of those Zimmer frames being pushed by old hamsters. Yeah, these kind of things.
Okay.
And we'll see with a blindfold on and see who can make it around the track the most times and win.
Joe Biden needs one of these.
Bernie, Joe, Pelosi, anyone who's 70 and up gets a crowdsource the truth Zimmer frame.
Hytham G is on Super Chat and Crowdsource the Truth too, telling us OAN puts Mad Cow on defamation lawsuit about Russia. I saw that.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely. And Mad Cow is in deep trouble.
Because she said they were like literally paid Russian propaganda or something like that?
Well, and her defense, it's the kind of defense, I know someone else tried this defense, didn't work too well for the person. Her defense is to say, well, everybody knows that when I say something and suggest it's a fact, it's not necessarily a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Rachel, that's really going to be helpful to your investigative journalism career.
There was something else that came up. Laura Loomer has a lawsuit going against Facebook, and one of the things that they said in their defense was that they're a publisher of content. So that was their defense, but that goes against their protection as simply a network. Right. So it's interesting to see where all these lawsuits will go. It seems like lawyers always have a way to argue stuff no matter what happens, and we're seeing that with the impeachment as well.
Well, when I was in my hothead phase in college, when I never really was that much of a hothead, but in that phase, I remember there was a march in Skokie. Where the Nazis were allowed to march in Skokie, Illinois, which is, I think, I don't think it's a suburb of Chicago. I think it's in Illinois, where there are a lot of Jewish people. And I was rather amazed that the American Civil Liberties Union was defending the Nazis.
And I think even a Jewish lawyer.
Right, and so the principle there, it's not actually, it takes a while to think it through and realize that this is actually the right way to do it. You want these ass clowns to speak, and you want these opinions out there, and you want the public to listen to them and say, these are ass clowns, and they need to be disciplined, and here's the truth. They say this is a bunch of lies, here's the truth. That was the whole idea behind freedom of speech. In Jefferson's conception of it way back when. And so this idea that you'd have Twitter, and there's Facebook and Twitter, and I suppose you could say Google, but really Facebook and Twitter primarily, that you're going to let I don't care if the person's 65 or 25, somebody who has little experience in politics and economics just slap things down, just Somebody says something, you just take it right off the internet, whether
Yeah.
it's Trump or some raving lunatic. I think if you're going to have a system where you're allowing people to post anonymously,
Yeah.
then you just have to have all that garbage up there. If you one nice control would be to say no longer can you do that. If you want to post, you have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom of speech anonymously.
I agree with that, Charles. I think particularly on YouTube, if people want to just watch anonymously, you should be able to do that. I did notice that YouTube has introduced some sort of incognito feature. I don't know exactly what that is, but I'm sure troublemakers will find ways to make trouble with that. But I agree with what you're saying. People have the right to view it anonymously, but if you want to create content, whether it be videos
Right.
or comments, you should have to be a known entity. It's the same problem we're having with this whistleblower
Right.
who they say Trump outed. How is retweeting a public web page outing somebody?
Right, and where's the balance in all this? I mean, you have somebody who went through an election, went through a vicious set of primaries to, knock down a bunch of establishment favors, including Jeb Bush and others.
Yeb? Yeah. Oh, because he speaks Spanish?
Right. Yeah, see. And many others went through that torture chamber and then took on the Hague and destroyed her because he actually campaigned, spending less than half of the money that she spent in an election she thought she'd run.
It's a very good result.
And now, exactly, and now we're approximately 11 months away from the next election, and this raging Dumkopf, Schiff and the various people behind Schiff all think it makes sense to allow an anonymous person, to allow and then protect an anonymous person who certainly is not an unbiased player. It was a partisan hack. From what I can tell, if it is the person whose name is being bandied around, that person can disrupt the entire world in a process here where we're flouting the Constitution. Instead of getting things done in Washington, D.C., is yet another excuse to have people who are on the record in the Clinton impeachment. And we're going to bring you back to the Clinton impeachment in a few slides from now, because there's some details even I had forgotten about. People who, during the Clinton impeachment, were fond of saying the White House, that is to say Clinton, absolutely can coordinate with Tom Daschle, the Senate Majority Leader. Absolutely. That's Schumer saying that. Pelosi saying that you shouldn't do this impeachment unless it's broadly bipartisan. And you just look at what they said then in 1998. Now, 21 years later, they're saying exactly the polar opposite. And people are not that stupid. I mean, there are...
Some people are that stupid.
I'd say the bottom 20% of the class, which would be the star players, it would seem, amongst the Democratic candidates. There's some people there who'll believe anything. But I think the heart of America, the people who actually make sure that their annual or their monthly incomes are, to the extent possible, greater than their monthly expenses, and are looking after their wider family and themselves responsibly, those people look at this and they say, there's a reason I'm turning off all politics, that I don't read the New York Times and the Washington Post anymore. I'd rather read the instruction book for a piece of Korean junk,
Like a barbecue grill from Home Depot.
Exactly.
It's always like, wait a minute, this piece isn't in the box. This isn't even English.
I'd rather read that 40 times than read like 2 pages of the New York Times or the Washington Post today. But anyway, to the art department, once again, in case people are having difficulty reading the face of the person who's the main character here.
Schiff LaMotta?
Yeah, that's what happens when Adam Schiff, gets a pounding. The pounding that I think this should be after like one round in a 15-round match where there are no referees, because the objective here is to pound this face into smithereens.
Could be his first day in jail with Ed Buck.
Exactly, the first hour. And then you've got, what do you think Senator Schumer is saying there?
No cheese on the hamburger.
No, I think it's our friend.
Yeah.
You got the Amazon thing. The look on his face.
Oh, right. Oh, yes, right. You better put some ice on that. Right. I forgot. Whoops. Oh, I totally screwed up the joke, Charles. Sorry, people couldn't see that.
That's all right.
Sometimes this comedy timing, it's hard to do. But yeah, that's the book from Juanita Broderick. You better put some ice on that. I'm still amazed how few people are aware of her ordeal and think that Bill Clinton is a great guy. And if we did a Venn diagram of those people and the people who wanted to throw out Brett Kavanaugh, it would actually be just a circle.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you even have that librarian, she looks like a librarian, which I think librarians are great people, Amy Klobuchar, was quoted in the last week or so saying that Hillary Clinton would have made a fantastic president. Anyway, so there's Schumer telling Schiff to put some ice on that, and Nancy Pelosi, has got her 150-watt smile on, belying the fact that there's nothing between those ears. I mean, there are people.
There's a lot of booze sloshing around in there, Charles. Give her some credit.
But I love it when you have who was it, the guy, the guy who was saying about Obama, Chris Matthews, was saying about Obama and the Obamacare idea. He was saying, maybe, I watch him talk just like this, maybe the issue with Obama is that we, the intelligentsia, are not smart enough to appreciate his genius.
Right.
And similarly, people are saying, this Pelosi move, she's got Donald Trump just where she wants him. He's fallen into this trap. I mean, no. She should go back and run around with her constituents, doing what they like to do in San Francisco, and pretending that that's
pooping in the streets.
Pooping in the streets, and pretending that that's really civilized.
Yeah.
And saying people, those people in flyover country don't know how to live the way we do. Intense pooping on the street.
Right. Intense pooping on the streets. It's not just mild pooping. But, Charles, there was two things that came up. Tom Daschle was the unwitting recipient of anthrax, maybe from Robert Mueller. There's a whole story having to do with Porton Down and how it was weaponized anthrax, this spore powder, like regular anthrax, it's kind of hard to catch. That was weaponized anthrax, and not just any old person could make it. But that caused Tom Daschle to retire, I think, from Congress, didn't it? After that anthrax
I don't know about
thing?
that, yeah.
And then the other thing I was going to tell you is somebody asked Joe Biden if he became president, two questions. First of all, if his teeth would be able to stay in his mouth. Answer was no. Second, that's not true. Second question was, would he appoint Obama to the Supreme Court? And he's like, yeah.
No, he said, yeah, if he'd take the job. But it's amazing. I got a phone call over the weekend from the great Utrice Lead, who is a long time. She previously was head of the senior person at WBAI, which is a radio station that's hard left, that is, I think, closed.
Randy Credico.
They went out of business, and then she went over to Progressive Radio. She's been in Progressive Radio now for quite a while, and we hadn't spoken in quite a few months, and we'll be on the air, I guess, sometime this coming week, reprising what happened in the last year. And she's a person who is, and I admire her. We disagree on economics, on certain economic issues. She is from the Caribbean area, and she loathes Obama. She really thinks he's a poser, that he did not really accomplish much for the minority community while he was president. He had a golden opportunity.
$65 million.
I know. Well,
that's pretty good accomplishment.
That's right. Here's your tip. But anyway, so I got a call from her, and during the 2016 period, I actually started going. May of 2016, I started going on her show. She's from Trinidad. That's exactly right. And we have done at least, I want to say, 50 broadcasts together. And during the 2016 period, at the height of the campaign, I was on almost every day for an hour.
Wow. Going
back and forth with her on different issues. And she's a wonderful person, highly educated, unique perspectives. But she and I have found common ground on abuses of the deep state. She is outraged that a charity like the Clinton Foundation and the Clintons themselves would take advantage of the desperately poor Haitian community and other communities of color around the globe. So this is a wonderful person, and I've really enjoyed working with her on air. In fact, I'm trying to get her to come on this show, but she's very coy about it.
I think she doesn't like me.
No, she doesn't like George that much, I don't think. Remember George was supposed to go on her show and sort of forgot about it?
I do remember, and I can definitely sympathize with not liking George. It's a common occurrence, but enough of that. Now, Was there anything else we wanted to touch on before
Again, this is another, I mean, we're well into a process here of creating a lot of content, both in video, audio, you with the
funny images?
These are great images, they really
Thanks.
are.
I got to revisit the book idea and see if there's a way to make it work and have it not cost too much money. But I mean, again, so much of my time is taken away by these lawsuits, and I can't tell you, Charles, how many parallels I see when I'm listening to these pundits talking about what's happening with Donald Trump and how the Constitution warned against you. Basically, one of the biggest issues that keeps coming up is that they're saying they've lowered the bar for impeachment so much, and the fact that the Congress and the American people have allowed it to go this far does not bode well for the future of the presidency, irrespective of Donald Trump, because now it's just going to be used again and again as a political tool. It's basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Log jamming, hog tying, slowing down the presidency, preventing him from being able to do anything, even with interacting with foreign leaders. Something just happened to us, Charles.
What's that?
Something bad. The network seems to. Okay, I think it's back. Weird. I think we're back.
Good.
Cameras are frozen. No, there's a microphone disaster happening. Now it's back again. Okay, I think we're back.
Sorry about that. It's gremlins.
It's something. I hope it's working. It seems to be working. Okay. They're screwing up the presidency because basically they're just going to impeach this guy, now they're going to impeach Trump again if they're not happy with this outcome.
We'll see how this gets resolved. I mean, we'll see. I don't think we should go to the place that the UK is in, where in a lawsuit the loser pays. But we're clearly, for
Why
both.
not? I like that.
Well,
if it's a frivolous lawsuit.
But we're clearly in a place where, with regard to this matter, I mean, it's just hypocritical in the extreme. And these are three of the main hypocrites. Most of the mainstream media, and particularly anybody who would get up huffing and puffing on MSNBC or CNN or the major networks, opining about this is worse than Watergate and this is this and that. I mean, these people are really embarrassingly stupid.
Well, it's worse than Watergate because this is, nonsense. Watergate may have been as well. This is inspiring me to go back and learn more about Watergate, because I think that might have also been manipulated as well. But we just, as the public, didn't have as many tools and resources to be able to scrutinize what's going on. We just didn't have access to as much information. And this is definitely the first lawfare impeachment. And while we're talking right now, I'm caused to wonder, Adam Schiff went to Harvard Law. I wonder if he ever had any classes with Lawrence Tribe.
Oh, probably.
How can we find out?
I'm sure do a little bit more research. People in the crowd maybe can help us out.
People should see if there's any connection between Lawrence Tribe and Adam Schiff. I mean, we know that Lawrence Tribe is doing all kinds of stuff with the Lawfare blog. He's a contributor over there. We know that Ben Whitties is constantly tweeting stupid nonsense.
Isn't that pronounced Nitwitties?
Nitwitties is constantly tweeting stupid nonsense. And we'll have to see what happens with those guys. But Charles, I think it might be an appropriate time to hit the slides.
Sure. So I think when we think about the overall tenor of what's happened in the last several months here, we had this headlong rush, in the House, where the minorities' rights were trampled, completely run roughshod over by Schiff and the lawfare crowd and the mainstream media. It's like, you're accused, you got no rights. Right. There's no due process. You're accused, which means everybody knows you're guilty. It's just a matter of time before, the mark guilty gets placed in your forehead. So let's not waste resources. Let's just rush. It's the polar opposite of what the founders wanted to make sure was the fundamental essence of government in this country. You are indeed innocent until proven guilty. And actually, just remind the audience that one of my ancestors a long time ago was somebody who seriously cheesed off King James II. He was this guy called Major General Robert Smith. And Robert Beverly, actually. It was Robert Beverly. Both of these people were ancestors, but it was Robert Beverly who
Not Robert Smith? He didn't...
Both of them.
Frontman in The Cure?
No, it's a common name, of course. But Major General Robert Beverly was a substantial landowner and a figure in Virginia. He had tens of thousands of acres of land in Virginia, multiple plantations, multiple this, multiple that, but he was very much involved. I think he was trained as a lawyer, and he held a variety of positions, including, I think, Speaker of the House of Burgesses or some high position. He did not like King James II. And King James II rose into power and was taking undue liberties with the colony of Virginia. And Beverly basically just said, he may be king over there, but I'm here. Right. And you can't do this kind of stuff. And so King James basically arranged for his goons to go in and hold Beverly without any charges, just to round him up and just
Sounds a lot like Robert Mueller.
Exactly. And there are some who argue that this is in 1680 some odd, that Jefferson used that particular experience as one rationale for putting the right to habeas corpus, I think, in the body of the Constitution as opposed to the Bill of Rights. So you're almost doing the same thing here with this bullschiff, of Schiff. And we should first ask the question, what in the hell, there's your answer, what in the hell is the head of the Intelligence Committee? And it's under his leadership, the lack of Intelligence Committee. Right. What the hell is that guy doing orchestrating this impeachment? Since when is a counterintelligence? I mean, there's no proof anywhere. There's no credible evidence that Donald Trump was acting on behalf of foreign interests. There's there's a lot of credible evidence that the Clintons, through their foundation, took tens, hundreds of millions of dollars from foreign governments via their in quotes foundation while she was a secretary, while she was a senator, while she was the Secretary of State, while she was a presidential candidate. And none of these monies, none of these government grants, which governments claim they gave to the Clinton Foundation for the period 1998 to 2007, there has never been an accounting for that money. So there's a lot of suggestion that the Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes may have been taking money from foreign powers.
Yeah.
And you take all their net worth, all those people's net worth up, and you compare it to Donald Trump, it's a fraction of Donald Trump's net worth from private industry, yet they don't have to explain any of their government grants. And now we're going to impeach, through this process. This is what Lawrence Tribe, a vaunted professor of Harvard Law School, I mean, this guy should be working for the Harvard Moving Company, one way, moving from his house into Guantanamo Bay.
Well, instead of vaunted, he should be vaulted.
Yeah. I mean, this guy is a disgrace, and quite frankly, people at Harvard should be thinking quite deeply about whether is this the type of set of precedents that Harvard Law School once distinguished, that Harvard Law School and its faculty wants to let stand. Here we have Lawrence Tribe saying that this Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vidman is somebody that he extols. I mean, this makes me wonder, how deep are the connections among these various professors with foreign government donors that can give unlimited amounts of money to Harvard?
Look, he has a lot of followers, Charles.
Right.
Yeah, I don't trust this guy at all. I think he's trouble. Dr. Corsi told us that he has disliked him since the age of 17, which I like a good grudge, Charles.
Yeah, that's like a long-standing
one. Like a 55-year-old grudge.
Yeah. You got his phone number there.
Oh, I'll call him up. Maybe we should. Maybe we could arrange like a UFC bout between Dr. Corsi and Lawrence Tribe. I don't know.
You see there's his CV. Let's look at that.
Where is it?
It's on the right.
Oh yeah.
There, yeah. If we hit that, I wonder where he went to. If he went to Yale Law School.
No, I think he went to Harvard, didn't he?
Let's see. Harvard Law School, yeah.
Yeah.
Summa cum laude in math. Did really well in ways.
Phi Beta Kappa. Oh, I got to show
Beta
this.
Krappa.
I got to show this to David Hawkins.
Yeah, the Joseph Beale Prize for the person most likely to destroy the reputation of Harvard.
Or the Republic.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are absolutely disgraceful in my view. And this guy would have been fired from 21st Century 3D before he walked in the door. He's breaking the first rule of CVs. 8 pages, 9 pages? Sorry. Make it 1.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the slides.
Back to the slides, indeed. So we have this crazy process where the majority in the House rushed out a vote, and Nancy Pelosi, the people who were rushing the vote, saying we've got to vote, we've got to have a decision right away. They rushed the vote, and then Nancy says, on second thought, never mind, we'll just sit on it. Maybe I'll send it over, maybe I won't send it over. It's all up to me. This is the kind of imperial power. Right. That nobody is supposed to have in a system of checks and balances. I don't think the founders ever imagined that somebody as corrupt, and I think Nancy Pelosi is corrupt as shit, as Schiff as well, in this whole thing. We're going to talk about the Ukraine issue, but I don't think the founders ever imagined that people would be this bold, this nakedly partisan, and say, we're going to just, by the time you figure this mess out, we'll have accomplished our objective. We'll cause as much harm as we could to Donald Trump. And we'll be judged wrong, but we still will have hurt.
They got it over the plate. Yeah, that's the whole goal of lawfare, is that they know where the holes are and they're going right in them. I still say the reason Nancy Pelosi is not giving these articles everybody's sitting there like, why isn't she doing it? I can't understand this strategy. It's because in the Senate they'll be subject to due process, and immediately it will fall to a motion to dismiss because it's not demonstrating that he's broken any laws. It's great for yelling about on the news and smearing his campaign for 2020, but it has no legal basis and no chance of surviving the motion to dismiss.
Right. And so, but what I think will happen, and we're a long way away, people like to say, it's a whole nother baseball season, but we're a long, long way away from the election of 2020. By then, barring something taking all this off the table for other reasons, I think we're looking at a wave election, because I think what we're looking at is people saw, in the case of the Republican-controlled Congress under Donald Trump, it's difficult to explain the lack of progress from 2017 and 18, other than to say that there's a whole bunch of corrupt never-Trumpers among the Republican ranks at that moment in time, and why they couldn't have made more progress in the House and the Senate in the first 2 years. In the second period, now that we see what happens when you let Nancy Pelosi and her ilk, President Swalwell, aka Farticus.
President Swalwell?
That's what Corey Lewandowski called him. And the series of all these absurd people who get in front of the camera every time there's anything to say on the Democratic side of the thing. The American public looks at this and they see what happens when these corrupt and immature and immoral and lawless crowd gets anywhere near power. And I hope that the combination of the money disadvantage that the Democrats now face across the country, the enthusiasm gap, which is gigantic. You have people ranting and raving about how Hiawatha got a great crowd, because she got 1,100 people or 1,200 people at some meeting of...
Didn't her own brother say she was lying about something? And speaking of immature and ignorant and a communist...
There you go. Yeah.
But her brother said that she was lying about her uncle being...
No, her father. She's going around saying, that is to say, Hiawatha is saying that, she came from modest circumstances. Her father was a janitor.
Right.
Her father was not a janitor. But of course, anything she says, you should assume it's a lie. That's amazing. Why I call her Hiawatha.
Yeah, I mean, she is just so far outside the... I would, I'm totally open to the concept of a female president, but we need to find a female who's not also a dope.
And a male who's not also a dope.
Right.
But this person is... there's not been enough said yet about how she rose to become a tenured professor of law at Harvard. It wasn't because she had an 8-page CV like Larry Tribe.
9.
Or 9. It was because Harvard, in my view, Harvard was under attack, fairly under attack, for not having a diverse faculty, anything approaching a diverse faculty, and they thought, well, this is great. We can get a Republican Native American woman from Oklahoma. This is perfect. We'll tick all the boxes off, and then we can say, see, we've got a Native American. Stop your yammering. But anyway, I think we are seeing signs. There's something I don't have up here in the link of an Atlanta black entrepreneur saying people don't understand the degree to which this tax bill is helping small and medium-sized companies, particularly minority-owned small and medium-sized companies. People don't understand how the immigration crackdown is increasing the employment opportunities for resident citizens who happen to be minority, Hispanic, black, et cetera. And where the calculation was, and I remember I got the lecture on the blue wall that Trump would never pierce.
Blue wall?
Blue wall.
Cops?
Blue wall is the theory that the blue states have so many electoral college votes that it's very difficult and will become even more difficult for a Republican to win because the electoral college map is stacked in favor of states that are controlled by Democrats. And I think what you're seeing is this decade-long period where minority groups reflexively voted for the Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons and the Bill Clintons and the people who would say that they do all kinds of good stuff without realizing that these people were misery merchants. They're fond of saying, this is miserable and that's miserable and that we need to tax the rich and we need to do this and put me in or I'll punish you. The beatings will stop when morale improves type of person. That people are looking at that and saying, wait a minute, Donald Trump went in there with zero political experience, with literally the deep state trying to get him impeached on day one, the day after the election.
Yeah.
They've been trying to do this. Look what he's been able to accomplish with
Amazing.
all this stuff. And he's being held down by his arms and his legs. Everyone's trying to, and he nonetheless gets all this stuff done. And then people are looking with their own eyes at their paychecks.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have multiple job offers and they have greater leverage with their employer and they have more options. And the United States seems to be doing really well as China's falling apart, Europe has fallen apart, much of the world is in disarray, not because of the United States, but because
globalism.
There's structural problems around the world, and these people who are into big bureaucracies and corruption and waste don't seem to understand that's not going to work for the people. It may work for them. It's not going to work for the people.
I think he's the best president we've had in my lifetime, seriously.
Well, that would include
I know
Reagan.
you like Ronald Reagan a lot, but I don't know.
So Reagan was, remember that back when Reagan was president, we were in a Cold War. You could say that Russia's a rival and this. Back in 1980, or January 20th, 1981, when Ronald Reagan swore, his inauguration oath, there were the strategic nuclear weapons, hydrogen bombs trained on the United States of America. China was far away from deciding that it might go down the track of being in a capitalist, global, market-based economy. And this guy had, several decades of corrupt Democrats doing their level best to destroy the economy. And they put him in, then he gets shot.
Yeah, that was bad.
And he was not young.
But also like Trump, he was from the entertainment world, so that's kind of interesting.
Maybe there's a lesson there.
Maybe. Yeah, but Charles, I wanted to ask you, did you see this appearance, I think it was over the past few days, of Al Sharpton on Fox News, where he referred to Donald Trump as a con man?
That's good. That's rich.
Like, whoa. Yeah, next we're going to have Gerald Nadler saying, listen, fat. It's like, he's up on the con man there.
I know. He puts the con in con man.
Right. I mean, that was just, I think everybody was sort of like, next topic.
Right. So I think we know enough to know that we're not going to have the swamp actually drained until 2021 at the earliest. I mean, it's not...
Swamp's not going to drain itself, Charles.
Well, I understand, but you're going to have the public. If you remember when in October of 2008, as I was putting my arguments against GE out there, we had the financial crisis really start moving, and there was a moment actually where Obama, I think he was President-elect Obama, said, I'm the person who stands between you and the men and women with pitchforks. That's what he was saying to various people. I think we're close. There's a different kind of group with pitchforks now, looking at this messing, looking at Epstein and Weinstein and Clinton and now Obama with his absurd payments for book deals and other things. Looking at the inside Washington, D.C. crowd getting rich, and the inside multinational GE crowd getting rich, you know, whether or not the constituents do well, whether or not the company shareholders do well, the people on the inside of the swamp, they come out smelling clean, or appearing to smell clean, maybe, but they come out considerably richer than when they began life, for the experience of laundering money, basically, of letting the real crooks off the hook.
Yeah.
They get their pieces. And in the Clintons' cases, it's estimated, who knows what the real number is, but it's estimated in the hundreds of millions. Obama certainly seems to be heading towards hundreds of millions. And I think the people are sick of this, and the insiders in both parties who believe that the status quo that operated through 2016 is going to be something we'll ever return to, they are badly misled in my view.
Yeah.
So it takes the public to stand up there. We're going to have to spend, let's hope we're able to do this the next 11 months, we're going to have to continue to encourage, to motivate people to get out there and call these bullshiffers out. So with that, maybe we should just quickly remind people that this is a different approach. I guess we sailed off into the wilderness in June, starting in June of 2017 with this idea. We haven't really changed the format much. We've tried to learn from it.
Refined,
improve it with the suggestions that we get from people, and we appreciate those many suggestions. We try to incorporate those that make the most sense to us. And we caution people that this is really, though Jason and I have this banter, you're going to learn the most from this process if you go and check the links that we put out there, check the facts that we put out there for yourself. You see, we're trying to shed new light on evidence that's out there that the mainstream people can't be bothered to look at. And once you start going through this process of actually seeing with your own eyes just how crooked these people are, taking in as many of these shows as you care to do, it's a lot. They're out there. This is, I guess, our 198th two-hour show, excluding, I think, the Corsi special.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of content here. There are a lot of slides that people can look through.
And you know, Charles, if people haven't had a chance to see the rise of Skywalker, I won't ruin the end, but I will say that our Trump Wars is probably better. Save $18 as well. Yeah. We could have done that episode in 3D. That might have been nice. Help. Damn it! The sound keeps somehow. I don't want to touch it because it seems to come back. Okay, now I think it's back. That's so weird. I don't know why that keeps happening. Everybody still with us? Okay, we're back. But the thing I wanted to point out to you, Charles, is that for each of the episodes, if people want to access the slides for themselves, they can go to the video description here. You're typically going to see this show more, and you just click right on the words. You've got all of the sponsorship links. You've got the link to crowdsourcethetruth.com, and you'll see this little message, download Charles's presentation. You can click right on the link, and for each video, it's got the PDF presentation right there. You can download it to your own computer with this, the standard download icon, and then you can print it out and follow along, or just save a tree and read it right there on the screen. But it's a great way for people to go in deeper. I often find when I'm searching around for things, one link leads to the next, and just spending time with it will almost invariably lead people to more information perhaps than what even we discuss on the show.
Yeah, well, that's the whole intent of it. It's like this is the leave behind that you would give to a potential client or a client in a board presentation or in a...
Almost like a swag bag version of the...
Right.
You could put like a cell phone in there, $200. What keeps happening to our sound, Charles?
I don't know.
Okay, that's really a disappointment. Nothing different about anything that we're doing. It's back now.
But if we were to just quickly go back to the playlist for a second.
Sure.
I've had one of our most loyal followers suggest the virtue of maybe publishing on LinkedIn, which I didn't know you could do.
Videos?
A short piece explaining each of the videos that we think it would make most sense to go back and look at. And that's something I want to think about, and I may well do. I also have the option of publishing in multiple different formats, blog posts, a review of perhaps the ones that I think are most relevant. And so that's something I may well try to do in the beginning of the year.
They have video streaming on LinkedIn, and I applied for it a long time ago, but they never, I guess they don't want me to do it because they never wrote back. And I think you might need to have LinkedIn Premium or something. I don't know. I wasn't able to publish video on LinkedIn.
Well, no, I would publish an article, a text piece that would then direct people to link to the video.
Got it.
It would be the idea. If people think that's a good idea, let me know, actually. Sure. And I'll devote some attention to it. But we now have quite a bit of content out there, and I would point out as well that I can report as of this moment, we have had nobody, not one single person connected to the Clintons or the Obamas or any of these crooked foundations that we've been talking about, come back and say, listen, cease and desist, what you're saying is wrong, we need you to correct this, we need to correct that, because there's no need to correct any of this. This stuff is accurate. And so today, we're actually going to take it up a notch, as Emerald, my favorite.
Boom. Or what does he say?
Bam.
Yeah.
Take it up a notch.
You know, Charles, people who were watching on D Live are telling me that the stream is down. That might be related to, no, it seems to be running. I don't know what's going on. There's something going on here, shenanigans-wise. I don't know what's causing that. It's always something, Jared.
If it's not one thing, it's another.
Exactly.
Rosanna Dana, or Dana Dana, whatever it is. So if let's go. Yeah. So we have in this conservative treehouse, and specifically Sundance. The first link here is one we might want to jump into here. Sundance is really worth watching carefully. There's a lot of material that comes out here. And what they're trying to do, there's this writer called Natasha Bertrand. Yeah, bad egg.
Yeah, Lee Stranahan said the same thing about her. I had never heard about her before, but it's interesting that you brought her up.
Well, this is this Sundance bringing it up. And basically what people need to remember is that the current head of the CIA, Gina Haspel, was the London station chief during 2016. So the suspicion that I have, just from reading all this information, is that she would intimately know what John Brennan was doing with his friends, in quotes, over in the UK to try to get around those pesky little laws and regulations that the rest of we Americans have to abide by. And so they're trying various tactics to suggest that, well, you know, if Gina Haspel is not concerned about where we are right now, that means that nothing possibly could have gone wrong back in 2016.
Oh, is that what that means?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Well, alternatively, it could mean that she thinks she's snookered Trump. And,
right.
And really here, this is, you know, I don't believe that Gina Haspel, and I especially don't think that John Brennan, deserves the benefit of the doubt right now. We were not talking about something minor. To hear all the caterwauling that came out of the Democrats about Donald Trump has been, you know, colluding with foreign powers to interfere in an election, and that might be illegitimate. That's exactly what these people were doing. They were interfering with allies, with the UK and others, whether formally through the government or informally through the old boys and women's clubs over there in the UK. They were intervening, in my view, to keep the con game going of unregulated globalism so that their political cronies and their donors and their friends around the world could continue doing these crooked deals and schemes, juicing the returns for themselves with government grants, large government grants that were solicited in the main, in theory, to better the lives of poor people and vulnerable people around the world. That's the game these crooks have been playing. And they've had the benefit of the doubt. They live fancily, they have their savings, they have their reputations and their book deals, and their pasts are now behind them. And it's time for us, we the people who paid for all this shit, to understand what in the hell Brennan was doing and Haspel was doing. And it shouldn't take much more time to reveal to we the people exactly what was going on. It's not like they have an excellent reason. You know, we were about to finish the whole war on ISIS and wrap that up, well, no, you weren't very far along in that. We were about to finish this war in Afghanistan. Well, no, actually not. You didn't do much there. We were about to get peace in the Middle East. No, you didn't have that under. I mean, they can't say that they are secret plans. I mean, maybe they can say, well,
oh, they had secret plans.
You know, whole group of aliens that are living in the Pacific Ocean,
We lost, again, our thing here. Give it just a second. I think it should come back. I'm sorry. I don't know why this is happening, Charles, but the microphone, I'm very reluctant to do anything because it will end the stream, and it seems to be coming back by itself. Oh, we just lost the stream, Charles. Well, let's keep... I have to upload this afterwards, but... Okay, our audio is back. I think people... So disappointing. But let's keep going, and then we'll re-upload the whole thing afterwards. Right. Gina Haspel was the first female CIA director, right?
I think so, yeah.
John Kiriakou told me that she used to take specific flights to Afghanistan to watch the torture.
Yeah, that's something
Abu Ghraib.
In Iraq, you mean?
Iraq, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
So,
what's going on? Yeah, the stream just ended. I see. So we'll be back for everybody watching tonight, but let's keep going.
All right. So if we go back in the slide, yeah. So this, let's not mention the actual name of the whistleblower because I don't want to get you in more trouble.
Yeah.
But here's a piece of Breitbart, and you know I don't utter the phrase Breitbart with any kind of contempt. I wrote for Breitbart. Mm-hmm. I wrote directly for Steve Bannon when he was chairman of Breitbart, and I think that there's some fine journalists over there, unlike the New York Times, where I think the New York Times has been enthralled to people like George Soros and other crooks for a very, very long time. This idea that everyone will fall in lockstep here for fear of being banned by Twitter should tell you much more about the power, the unjustified power of Twitter, and even more about the morality and the journalistic integrity of these people who are supposedly protecting this whistleblower. I mean, we have done several shows about exposing Mark Said and his supposed law firm and its corrupt ties to the whistleblower.aid.org, which is not in fact a validly organized or operated charity, just like the Clinton Foundation, just like the Obama Foundation. We've been over and over that. We were over it from the get-go. And why you should be able to hurl these sort of accusations against a sitting president of the United States, triggering impeachment, you know, and have no right to question the person who is making these claims is so far away from being the lawful process that's on the books. And that a whole bunch of cynical journalists would say, oh, all right, you know, we'll give this team the benefit of the doubt. I mean, the guy, one of Mark Said's partners, is the former Inspector General of the intelligence community who, quote, missed Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information to be as serious a crime as I believe it still is. And so this team is now whipping up the impeachment frenzy, and everyone's going lockstep and saying, no, we can't question who this alleged whistleblower. We can't, first of all, question whether the person is a whistleblower, and if so, whether that person is protected, where the identity deserves to be kept anonymous, and we're not allowed to investigate his motives. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was addressed, I can't remember if it was on our previous show or a different show, where Horowitz himself addressed this matter of does the Whistleblower Act grant him anonymity? It allows for confidentiality, but it does not supersede the constitutional right to face your accuser.
Yeah, it's sort of an absurd proposition, and that so many journalists would just fall in line and say, oh yeah, okay, we're going to do this.
Confidential, right.
Yeah, right. It's crazy.
It is. It's very upsetting.
And then another lawfare argument here, but they're basically suggesting here is what Hillary's grand plan was to do, was to have this impeachment pending so that the lawsuits which the House Judiciary Committee is advancing, or trying to advance, suggesting that they have a right to Mueller's grand jury material, which is an absurd concept.
Yeah.
I mean, even that our House Judiciary Committee would push this down the line is so far away from being the case. I mean, if this precedent were allowed to, if they win and the precedent survives the Supreme Court, we will be in a very different place, a very dangerous place, because, you know, How can you have a grand jury process
Right.
where you're actually trying to encourage all sorts of people to come forth? If you don't believe that what you say in a grand jury will indeed be kept confidential, you will do your level best to say nothing,
Right.
to not appear before a grand jury, or to say, I refuse to answer on the grounds that I may incriminate myself. And so this is for a set of lawyers paid by the U.S. taxpayer. At this moment in time, where we're running $1 trillion deficits and you have $20+ trillion in debt, would do this now in this way says so much more about them than it does about Donald Trump. These people need to pay a grievous price, not just at the ballot box in 2020, but after the fact, when sanity is restored to Congress, if it ever is. We need to go back over this ground, and we need to set a much clearer set of precedents for the future, that we had a bunch of raging bullshiffers who somehow managed to get into power. They ran riot. They as people will do when they go into some Western town and they drink a bar, completely dry and burn everything down. That's what these people are basically doing here. And we've got to go back over the aftermath and say, this was a bad period of life, and this precedent can't stand. And Greg Jarrett was on, I think, Hannity, or either hosting Hannity, and was on Fox the other night saying that his idea is that they should just say, we're not going to wait for Nancy. Nancy has done her work. She bragged about it having been an impeachment. She may be sitting on the actual physical document, unwilling to transmit it, but the text of it has already been transmitted. And let's just begin the process, which I think would be to move for an immediate dismissal.
Yeah, well, he's saying to start a trial. I say they should dismiss it. And I think the reason why Nancy Pelosi is able to do this is that there is... Wait a minute. We just lost the sound again. This is so frustrating to me. Okay, it's back now. There is some gray institution, Charles, with regard to, what this transference of the articles, it doesn't go step by step, this has to happen, this has to happen. It's sort of just assumed that transference of the articles is part of the impeachment process. And so the lawfare experts within the Democrats in the House have decided, well, we won't do that, and until they challenge us, this is the new way we'll do it.
Well, what he's saying is that Jarrett's saying it's a Senate rule. The existing Senate rule is that she has to transmit it.
Right.
And I think what Jarrett's saying is, let's get 51 senators to change the rules.
I don't like all this changing of the rules. It's like, what the hell is the point of the rules if you can just change them all the time?
Well, but the Senate is run by, unfortunately, it is run by, in theory, rules. So you can't just flout, the Senate is not going to flout its rules.
The House did.
That doesn't mean the Senate will. The Senate's going to, I hope, set a higher standard here.
We're totally off the rails here.
Yeah. And then, here you have a very good Washington Times piece saying, listen, the American public is going to judge this process. We may all be on now New Year's Eve break for another week. But the idea behind impeachment, let's go back to base principles. The idea behind impeachment is the founders contemplated a set of future facts where the people would put in place high officials who flouted their authority, or worse, behaved in criminal conspiracies. And these people needed to be held potentially to account before an election might happen again. So Pelosi, is making a fool, a greater fool than is possible out of herself.
An even greater fool.
An even greater fool theory. By rushing this process and then say, on second thought, no, we're going to slow it down, and turning it into something which could well disrupt the primary process for Democrats.
That's absolutely the purpose. It's not by accident. It's not a foolish. She's trying to do something, and it's working so far.
Well, we'll see if it's. I don't think it's working so far at all. I mean, Trump's poll numbers have gone way up.
Well, it's working in that it hasn't been shut down. The impeachment is being perpetuated. That's what I mean. I'm firmly convinced that if they did what they're supposed to do, it would be over.
Right. Right, but what I'm saying is that the immediate consequence and the currency in which politicians normally trade are poll numbers. And the poll numbers for Trump were actually getting worse until this happened, and now people are looking at this circus tragedy, and are saying, you know, this is craziness. And so she is writing her own epitaph, I think.
I like it.
And so then we have, you were mentioning Obama's book deal, and we brought this up in the past. So apparently, here's a piece, and I haven't vetted this, but a number of different people have been writing about this, and it would not surprise me that Monica Showalter is an excellent investigative journalist. She's the one who alleges that while Obama was president, a subsidiary of the publisher that gave him the $65 million
Makes sense.
payment got a large $350 million contract from the Obama administration to create this Common Core text. Now, I would guess it's going to be very difficult to connect dots specifically between Barack Obama personally and this transaction, but the basic principle here of examining all of these transactions involving taxpayer money and companies, domestic and foreign. This is a foreign company. This is an English company. And then these book deals and these speech deals and these board of directors, these post-office lobbying and investment and other deals, and these off-market real estate transactions, you know, where people get to buy mansions less than what they're really worth. Who knows how they finance it?
Was that?
I don't know. I mean, I think it was on the market for more than he ultimately paid. And again, I mean, there are a lot of rich people out there. To have a summer home, I mean, at most, the Obamas will spend 90 days a year, and I doubt they'll spend that much time in Martha's Vineyard. To be able to spend $12 million on after-tax money in Massachusetts, a high-tax state,
It's pretty crazy.
where the maintenance costs are high. This is on an island, so you know the insurance costs are high, the maintenance costs are high. It has a cold winter, a hot summer. You know, this is not something that's going to cost you're going to maintain for $10,000 a year. I mean, this is a massive capital and operating expenditure.
It's kind of a stupid purchase, from what you're saying.
Unless you know he actually already has $2 billion.
Right,
In which case,
you just don't care.
But then that's yet another set of question marks. I mean, what we're saying to the world, the wider American population, is, you know, you can be a crap student in high school, smoking weed, and you can be an even worse student at Occidental College. But if you have a certain profile, whether it be, it's not a racial profile, but a willingness to occupy these posts and look the other way as we rape and pillage and steal as much money as possible from the government and from governments around the world,
You're going to get paid.
that's a thing. You know, that's going to be a good thing for you. And so this is not a precedent that will stand in the end, I don't believe. And it's something that we have the Attorney General, we'll get to this later, the Attorney General of New York is happy to go all over the Trump Foundation. You know, how the Obamas, the Clintons, the Bushes, and others monetize their presidential foundations is a question that really needs to be examined very, very well. Now, on the Good News Department, I found, Jason, given your experience with lawsuits, I found this to be quite interesting, that next link down. Turns out that in the Hunter Biden case,
Oh, yeah.
there's been a development out in Arkansas. And normally the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, normally you don't get right to these stories. So somebody wants people to get right to these stories. Here's somebody not named Hunter Biden. It's Hunter Field going after Hunter Biden. But apparently somebody has,
What are the odds of that?
I don't know, Field Biden will be their offspring. But anyway, this is a long article, and yet another third party has intervened to say, you know, they have evidence of more financial payments coming up with this Hunter Biden and the Biden family.
Who is this guy?
Well, that we're going to find out. This just happened. So I think Hunter Biden and the Bidens are in a world of hurt. And remember, if your game plan, if you're sitting there, if you're sitting there looming over the sidelines as Hillary Clinton in her circus tent, thinking that you'll let everyone play out with the primaries and bloody themselves, shooting in the circular shooting experience. And then at the end of the day, she'll waddle in and save the day as the Democratic nominee. And
Waddle.
and in this time, they're going to rig and attempt to win the 2020 election.
I mean,
you would like to see.
They attempted last time. She won, actually, I think.
She's still the president.
Yeah,
she just doesn't have to go to 2020, whatever it is, whatever the address is, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But this whole Giuliani and inquiry with Chanel, I think I'm pronouncing it right, Chanel Rion, One American News. This is a must-watch three-part series. People have the time. We've been saying for many months, or if not years at this point, that a key to understanding this whole mess is Viktor Pinchuk in the Ukraine, what the Clintons were doing in the Ukraine starting by 2004, how Viktor Pinchuk and his wife could be down for giving between, I think, $10 and $25 million to the Clinton Foundation. In one of these tapes, and I forget which one, Giuliani specifically claims that $15.4 million was routed to Viktor Pinchuk to then go to various Democrats to continue this corrupt process that seems to be at the center, not simply of Democrats, but of these unregulated globalists who like to take our taxpayer money and feather their own nest. So this is a great series, and I expect more out of One American News.
Yeah, that was a good thing for them to do, to go over there.
Yeah. So then we have this whole Brexit situation. Now, there were many, I think, who were convinced that Britain was never actually going to exit the EU. And here's a long piece, and then even longer, this Tom Luongo, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, Tom, has got a long piece here suggesting that actually Boris Johnson and Trump have got this wired now. And the UK, in fact, will leave and could leave quite soon, could leave by January 31st, 2020. And that would be very good. I think if the stars are aligning properly here, we could have, we have the Remainers, I think, out of power, very much out of power in the UK. We still have that idiot mayor, Sadiq Khan, known, I think, just as Dick Khan, Mayor Dick in London. So we still have him causing trouble for Trump. But as the UK population thinks about the wisdom of committing suicide with the EU, or the alternative prospect of doing a real deal with the United States on trade, I think we're going to see the economic levers move in the UK. And with that, I think we're going to see Trump able to push Johnson very hard as part of the bargain to find out exactly what Brennan's allies in the UK security services and people around the security services were up to in the 15-16 timeframe, if not beforehand. So I think that's very good news.
It's too bad that they didn't call Christopher Steele as a witness in anything.
Well, we'll see. I mean, people say, let's wait for the Durham report. I don't think he's going to issue a report. I think he's, I hope, going to issue indictments, and we'll see who gets indicted. Now, it is this issue of homelessness. I walk everywhere here in Manhattan, and I just anecdotally believe that I'm seeing more and more homeless people in New York, and in particular Manhattan, which is the places I'm in are some of the richest places in America. And you see all these people on the street in cold weather and rainy weather, and isn't it ironic that all these caring politicians, de Blasio here in New York, and the Governor Newsom out there in California, the mayor of San Francisco, that they would look at this and not try to actually fix it. I mean, I think there's a serious mental illness problem, and there's a portion of the population that is mentally ill. It is very difficult to deal with mental illness. I'm certainly no doctor, but I can imagine that if you can't, when you talk to your doctor, typically the doctor's asking you a question, and if what comes out of the patient's mouth is gibberish, how are you supposed to know what's really inside the person's mind and what's really driving the problem? So
this is just in McDonald's.
No, I'm talking about this is walking up Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue.
Absolutely. And you know what else I noticed, Charles, is there's a huge amount of retail stores closing in New York City.
Right. So Trump is rightfully saying he expects to be asked nicely by the governors of New York and California if they need any federal help, and then he'll work on trying to solve the problem, which means actually doing something about it. And interview. I mean, if you see the same people on the street day in and day out and whatever, it seems to me that it's a pretty straightforward problem to say, all right, let's
figure out what's wrong with this person.
Let's take this person, treat the person with dignity, take them to a nice place, give them a moment to kind of chill out, then examine them, and take the time that is required to figure out, is this somebody whose brain is fried, who needs to be institutionalized, or is this somebody who's just fallen on hard times? What's really driving? To leave the same sets of people out there and have these gigantic bureaucracies with expensive doctors and administrators and budgets that nobody ever checks because we've got a homelessness problem or we've got a mental health problem,
right,
but not to actually help the patients, to me, is beyond deplorable.
It's also quite interesting to me to what extent doing what you're suggesting might actually save money, because how much crime is being done by the people in this population, where if they were brought out of that and given a productive job.
Right. I mean, we're close to I think in California and perhaps here in New York, we're close to the place where, these people living on the street are going to get an infectious disease. They're going to spread an infectious disease. They're going to harm themselves. They're going to harm their children, their old people out there. They go into restaurants. They go into the Grand Central. They go into places where there are lots of people.
Right.
And, God forbid, terrorists injected some of these people with something that could really, do damage. I mean, so I think Trump is right to highlight this, and I hope that this could be an area where Republicans and Democrats eventually can come together, say, let's actually try to do our level best here. We do live in a very rich country with a lot of resources and smart people. Let's try to figure this out.
Yeah, I think Nancy Pelosi is just more interested in trying to impeach Trump and Pence and become president herself.
Yeah, so it's such a selfless individual.
Yes, she's a public servant, Charles.
Right. I know. And then lastly, this is an interesting one. I hadn't put this one up before, but this is an excerpt from this is the final settlement with the Trumps. And if we go a few pages in here, like 2 or 3 more pages in, it says, these are some of this gets into, what Trump did with his Trump Foundation, holding this fundraiser on January 20th, 2016, when I don't know that he was necessarily registered to solicit money in Iowa, and the various rules that were broken, that here now the Attorney General of New York decides to make an issue of it with the Trump Foundation and the people running the Trump Foundation, including his family. Let's just remember this as I now take you through all of the rules that the Clinton Foundation has broken with regard not to $2 million, but billions of dollars, right here in New York, but also in Arkansas. This is the one that when the people in New York want to go after somebody for a $2 million offense, that's what they do. But they refuse to go after the Clintons for a far bigger set of offenses.
Now, there's another question that I have that is nothing to do with the amount, but it almost seems if that was in 2016 and they pounced on it in 17 or 18, and I know this isn't a defense, but it's possible that they didn't know. Whereas you look at, or someone was sloppy in handling it for a year or 2 or whatever, that's way different than 20 or 30 years of doing it.
Right. Well, so here's what I've done. And I didn't put this link in here. I'll let people do it themselves. When you're in Arkansas, when you're in any of these states, and again, I'm not practicing law, I do know how to read, and I think I can comprehend some of these rules. Yes, there's something called the Arkansas Nonprofit Corporation Act of 1993, but a nonprofit corporation is a subset of corporations. So the Arkansas Business Corporation Law of 1987 also applies to you. And here it's interesting to read this, and I don't know that most people would appreciate this. Our foreign friends, and some very specific foreign friends that you're going to soon meet, said to me when we first got into this, and I was trying to explain this in more detail to an investigator, said, this must be some conspiracy, Charles. I mean, this must spread. It must be a big conspiracy, And because, we can look at things when we can contact these governments and we look at what's in the file, and it's in the file, and you could trust it. Here's Arkansas law saying that with regard to documents that are filed in the Secretary of State's office, the duty of the Secretary of State is ministerial. Filing or refusing to file a document doesn't affect the validity or the invalidity of the document. In other words, just because it's in the Secretary of State's files doesn't mean it's right. And the Secretary of State doesn't have any duty to check it, to see whether it's correct or not. That's what I've been doing. That's what you've been doing. Right. That's what we've been doing. It ain't correct. Newsflash, none of it's correct.
Fact checker.
Right? Yeah. And most importantly, the fact that it's in the file does not create a presumption that the document is valid or invalid. Okay? So don't make the mistake of saying, I've looked in the file, the Secretary of State accepted it, that must be bullshit. It is not a legitimate thing just because it happened to find its way in the Arkansas files. And this is something that Arkansas needs to change. They really need,
What do you mean change?
Well, what Arkansas is doing by this approach, and maybe other states have it too, is inviting the lowest common denominator person. People who want to trick the public are going to move into Arkansas.
But who would do that, Charles? That's so far-fetched.
Right. So when you get something back in 64-110, when you get it, it's just evidence that the document's on file. Doesn't mean that it's correct. They're just Secretary of State saying, yeah, we have this false document. Charles, and the penalty for filing a false document is minor. It's a Class C misdemeanor. It's a small penalty.
This causes me, I believed this before, but this causes me to definitely believe that they searched the country to find the state where this scheme could most easily be hatched. I have a friend who, after high school, did this. He was a math genius, this guy, and he got into coffee roasting before Starbucks was around. Searched the country for the best place to open his coffee roasting restaurant, and created Rayo's Coffee Roasting in Amherst, Massachusetts, which became huge. Through the same method, finding, scientifically, where's the best place to do this? I think smart people do that kind of thing. Smart grifters.
Well, in 97, Clinton, this was born on October 23rd, 1997, so Bill Clinton had been Attorney General in Arkansas. He paved the way. He was governor. He made sure.
But he'd been all around the world. He could have launched his political career in any state whatsoever. Didn't have to go back to Arkansas. I think he did it because he was able to easily take advantage there.
Oh, sure. Sure. So let's keep going on this Arkansas matter. I think you want the next page. All right. So it took me a while to get this clearly, and I just want to make sure people understand. There is a very big distinction between incorporating and organizing a corporation. Incorporating is a very first step. It's a baby step. Lawyers can do it. People can do it for you. All it means is that you've done the very first step of getting some papers together that are called articles of incorporation that describe what the corporation can do once it is formally organized. I'm doing a simplistic way of explaining it. But here's the section in the statute. The corporate existence begins when the articles are filed. Okay, so in the case of the Clinton Foundation, their lawyers filed articles on October 23rd, 1997, from memory in the morning or in the early afternoon. Okay? Immediately thereafter, various and sundry trustees of this thing went around and said, no, we didn't create anything in 97. We didn't do that. Telling different states, telling the IRS, lying basically.
But why did they do that?
Because they didn't want to file what's called my suspicion is the short period IRS return for October 23rd, 1997 to December 31st, 1997, because as you'll see, you're a great straight man here, Jason, you'll see in a second, because there were some things going on in this October 23rd, 1997 to December 31st, 1997, where the Clintons desperately broke, overdrawn at the law firms, who'd been defending them since January of 93, not paying any of their legal bills, had just found out that their main legal expense trust, the first one that was being organized by ultimately a crook, Charlie Tree.
They just found that out? They knew that?
They knew, but right. But so they were in desperate shape, and they didn't want focus on this crucial period of what monies were going towards the Clintons in this period, and what were those monies being used for, and how much of that money might have disappeared. And they needed loyal people to be trustees, people who wouldn't rat them out, who were either in the Arkansas mob, David Pryor, or the wife of Vernon Jordan, who's one of the prime consiglieres for the Clintons. He was, I think, co-chair of Clinton's presidential campaign, and a big major league fixer around the world, but especially in Washington, D.C. and New York, and on the board of a whole bunch of companies. So they did not want focus on that period. Now, when you get together, and it says here all persons, that means the lawyers, that means the accountants, that means the principals, who claim to be acting on behalf of a corporation, but knowing there was no such incorporation, that it didn't really come together properly, are jointly and severally liable for all liabilities, all financial liabilities, which in the case of the Clinton Foundation are massive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay? So then you get to this thing of, after, this is specifically in this statute that applied, I believe, back in 1997 when this was coming together. After the incorporation, you look at the Articles of Incorporation, you say, are initial directors mentioned in the articles? In the case of the Clinton Foundation, they were not. Okay? So Clause 2 applies, but Clause 1 is instructive, and the document is in green here, because when you say complete the organization of the corporation, note that what that means is appointing officers, this crucial phrase, adopting bylaws, and later in the statute it makes clear you always have to have bylaws in place, and carrying on any other business brought before the meeting is something you need to do to actually organize the corporation. You can't operate, you can incorporate with articles, but you can't be conducting business until you adopt bylaws and have officers and stuff like that. And we will shortly see that they were doing a lot of monkey business without any bylaws.
Dinosaur business.
So the question I have here, the big question, and it's easy, I think, in New York to be asking this question, because back in D.C., I left off the S, Williams and Connolly is a very, very large and powerful law firm in Washington, D.C. Did they organize this presidential foundation October 23rd, 1997, because they realized, holy shit, the Clintons owe us millions of dollars. He could well get impeached and removed from office, and we won't get paid.
Right.
So, we get Larry Tribe and the other ethicists, at Harvard. I don't want Larry Tribe, but some real lawyers to think about this and say, my understanding in dealing with lawyers for decades now is that lawyers will generally only work for you on a matter like this if you pay them.
Right.
And you can't say to your lawyer, I'm having a bad month, I can't pay this $600,000 bill because I just can't. Mistresses are expensive and hush money's expensive and I can't tell Hillary about this. I mean, that's not the way it works. You have to, lawyers are not supposed to be investing in their clients. They're supposed to be providing legal advice, objective legal advice. And when they become aware of that their client is committing major league, bold-faced crimes, they're officers of courts. They're not supposed to say, my job now is to make sure that the judge doesn't find out. No, lawyers are supposed to uphold the law. So when you take a hard look at this, you look at this the way they would look at it if Donald Trump had been doing all this, starting October 23, 1997, what was Williams and Connolly doing? Was it a law firm, or was it a co-conspirator in a continuing and massive, burgeoning criminal conspiracy that is undercutting the administration of justice around the world, but inside the United States? I mean, that's the way I kind of look at it.
What is the law or the legal ethics like if a lawyer knows that the client is guilty but says, no, I want to plead not guilty, and telling the lawyer to lie? We have to ask a lawyer, I guess. Yeah,
Larry Klayman would be somebody I would ask about that. I think you could defend a client you suspect is guilty. That's one thing. But the thing that I don't think you can do as a lawyer,
lie.
No, is commit crimes. To join a criminal conspiracy.
Right. Oh, you can't do that?
No, I don't think.
I know some lawyers that seem to think you can.
No, I don't think you successfully can do that. And then, if you had the ability, which I believe our FBI does have, has had, always may have, so long as it's around, the ability to go back into time here and tease out of Bruce Lindsay and the other Arkansas lawyers in the period before October 23rd, 1997 and after October 29th, think of the records that must be there in the FBI's files, in the various, in the, to the extent they were using internet, the physical records. There have got to be a lot of records involving the billing records, for all these bills that were paid with the President's Legal Defense Trust and these other bills. How do they allocate David Kendall's time at Williams and Connolly? And then
they have detailed records of that.
Well, all right, so we go back through all.
But the FBI is, I don't know that they have the capability of doing anything beyond running up a huge bar tab.
Right.
So far.
So if we just keep going here, I'm taking people through a time travel back into history. Okay, now what I've done here, the methodology employed here, was to take some of the known timeline that I know about and then weave in, and I know it's dangerous to use CNN as a source, so for a lot of these entries, it's a long article here. I just take pieces of the article out and I put in quotes from the CNN, anything from CNN. So by October of 1997, there's a lot going on. They don't say in the CNN piece exactly when Linda Tripp is meeting with the Goldbergs, mother, Luciana, Jonah. And
who are the Goldbergs again?
Luciane Goldberg she runs something, Luciane.com, and Jonah Goldberg was a big deal at National Review. He's an ever-Trumper. He's a longtime investigative journalist. He's very frequently on Special Report as a panelist.
So he interviewed her for the.
Yeah, but they were on the early days of when, holy shit, there's this Monica Lewinsky. What exactly was she up to, right? Right. In October, she interviews with Bill Richardson, who's a straight up, I think he's a thug crook. And I may remind people, he was governor of New Mexico, and he was definitely on trips with Epstein. So this is somebody who's deeply suspicious, right? Mm-hmm. By the 23rd of October, as I mentioned, Williams and Connolly and Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings, the Arkansas firm, do file incorporation papers, but they don't organize this William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, right? Then on the 7th of November, we've done shows before on this, Skip Rutherford, who ultimately is the president of this supposed foundation, tells the mayor of Little Rock that Bill and Hillary have selected the Little Rock site. Now, if you're going to think of one decision that is pretty damn important about something called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, it would seem to me that it's the location of the site. And if you're going to allow two individuals, Bill and Hillary, to make that decision before there are any bylaws adopted for the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, it seems to me that act alone and the subsequent acts in Little Rock, where all sorts of bills are passed and orders are passed or whatever, to lay the groundwork for this thing to be actually ultimately constructed in Little Rock, tells me that the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation was a concept. It was a fiction. It was not an actual organization. It wasn't organized. And it certainly wasn't going to resist the power of the Clinton family to tell everybody, when I say jump, you ask how high. I mean, that's the way this thing was set up in the very beginning. They rushed Lewinsky out of the Pentagon. She had a Pentagon job. On the 8th of December, mind you, all of these days here that we're talking about, there's no bylaws for the Clinton Foundation. So Betty Curry is working with, here it says presidential pal in the CNN article. This is the husband of one of the three trustees of the Clinton Foundation, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. He's the one who's using his influence with crooked Democrats and others to try to get Lewinsky a job in New York so she'll shut the F up about what's going on here. And I got to believe that the communications back and forth here amongst the various Clintons themselves and their helpers would be extremely interesting to read. And history should allow us to read it. And so Lewinsky gets to meet with Vernon Jordan. I mean, Lewinsky is at this stage like a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
And she's meeting with a senior dude. I mean, this is a mover and shaker, decades in politics and business and law, on boards, big corporate boards. And she's getting a meeting right away. How many other interns got meetings with Vernon Jordan to get jobs in this time frame. I mean, it's absurd.
Well, and how many other interns are instructed by the White House photographer? Let's do another, but open your mouth, Monica.
Yeah. And she gets subpoenaed. Lewinsky gets subpoenaed by Paula Jones, right? And then
for her lawsuit against. Oh, wow.
Because Paula's trying to say there's a pattern and practice of
Right.
this, and she wants Lewinsky to come forward. So then on the 23rd, the lawyers get together and they file this, I would argue, complete fraud of an application that doesn't disclose all the defects in the entity at this time, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. They file it. Now here's an article down here, if we go just, not that, if we just move the page down. Yeah, this is from The Guardian, the excerpts from The Guardian here. Here's Lewinsky saying, on 10 to 15 occasions, she and the president had phone sex. Now, that happens, but this is
Didn't even have FaceTime back then. They were really into it.
on the Vanguard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
Really got to get your fingers into it.
but the point is, with this though, you're the president of the freaking United States.
On the phone with the phone sex with
right.
a 20-year-old. There's bombs going off everywhere.
Right.
What the hell
Right.
is going on?
Yeah, and then you know, on the 28th, we're going to talk about this. He goes for his final meeting with her in the Oval Office, and they're kissing, and she got mad, she says, after the fact, because he's looking out the window, they're making out or whatever, and he's like trying to check and make sure that there's nobody looking.
Right. Oh.
Right, and then he said, this is a classic. He breaks up with her, I think, on the 28th of December, and
It's like high school.
But look at this line. Earlier in his marriage, he told her, he had had hundreds of affairs,
Whoa.
but since turning 40, he'd made a concerted effort to be faithful. Let's think about that. When he was president of the United States, I believe he was 48 or thereabouts, right?
Yeah, something like that.
46, 7, 8.
He's like second youngest.
So,
yeah.
but since turning 40, he had made a concerted effort to be faithful. Yeah, like by engaging in phone sex with Monica
he
Lewinsky.
cut it down from hundreds to dozens. It's more bad than good, or more good than bad. Or
But you look at this, back in the day, think of the blackmail potential here. Think of how many different governments likely may have had these transcripts and what they might have done to exert the kind of leverage you could exert against a Bill Clinton in this time frame. And then ask yourself, what exactly was going on with this Mark Rich pardon? Right?
I'm just asking myself, where the hell does the guy find the time? Hundreds of women? I mean, what? How could he do anything else?
Maybe that's the whole point. Keep him distracted, and somebody else will make all those decisions.
I guess so.
So if we go then to the next page, then this will just go very quickly through this, merely to say here, this is all happening. All of these dates are while they don't have a decision yet back from the IRS about whether the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation is going to be approved. The IRS must have asked some questions of somebody.
I mean, he thinks it's a presidential library. There's no way it's not going to be approved.
They must have had, there's a hell of a lot going on here in the background, is my point. And all of this is relevant. And here's a crucial entry. On the 13th of January, 1998, Tripp is wired by FBI agents. Now, so far, maybe I've missed it, I haven't seen an FBI vault file on this matter yet.
Ooh.
And so what did the FBI actually know back in this time frame about what Clinton was doing? And what might the FBI be holding over the Clintons as leverage, both through the end of his presidency after he was not convected?
This would have been Louis Freeh, right?
Well, I don't know who the agents are, and I don't know.
But the director of the FBI.
I guess, was it? I guess so.
Sessions?
Yeah, it was
Freeh.
Freeh. Yeah. So the point is that there's a lot of evidence here that if the real mission of a presidential library was to tell, ultimately in the fullness of time, as much of the truth as could be told to the public at large about what your president was actually doing, this is something that I think is highly, highly relevant. And it goes on. If we go to the next page. All right, this is all of this stuff, keep going down this page, is all before the IRS grants conditional federal tax exempt status to the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. And in this time frame, I was using CompuServe email. I noticed that somebody, I think it was Skip Rutherford, was using Alltel email. Many people use AOL.
Alltel?
Yeah, Alltel is, I think, a Little Rock based or Little Rock connected telecom, tell less than all, firm that actually built the big headquarters right near the Clinton Foundation.
Whoa, that's interesting.
Right.
Isn't
So what would all these emails? I mean, if we had determined sleuths who were actually trying to find the truth, what are all those potential email addresses tell us about what this crew was actually concerned about at this time frame? And I think it would speak to the real motivation was Williamson Connolly was in a dark place here. The people that the Clintons, the Kendall, David Kendall was personally friendly with the Clintons, had known him for a long time. He'd done a lot to convince his partners, this is good, we need to be all in for the Clintons. In this time frame today, it's not as embarrassing as it once was back in 97, 98. When this was coming out, this was difficult to imagine that you'd have people engaging in this type of behavior in the Oval Office, then using government resources to try to cover it up, to threaten people who were trying to come forward. And notice, January 22nd, the husband of the person who's going to be one of 3 trustees for the Clinton Foundation holds a press conference and denies he told Lewinsky to lie, when I'm sure he didn't say,
Wait, who was that?
Vernon Jordan.
Oh.
This is Ann Jordan's husband. Right now, remember that this is while they're before the IRS saying that this public charity that we want to create here is not a political thing. We're not, the William J. Clinton Foundation is meant to be a presidential foundation, public charity. No partisan political activity involved. We're not raising money for a slush fund to stop this scandal from coming. We wouldn't be doing that.
You're on a whole other plan, Charles.
Right. So, and then on the 23rd, he lies to his own cabinet. Right? He says, no, there's nothing to it. Didn't do anything. I mean, this guy is quite prepared to say anything.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, there are people who like that. Bill Clinton's like that. Hillary Clinton's like that. Chelsea Clinton is apparently like that. And he gets up here on the 26th and says, I did not have sexual relations.
Listen to me very clearly.
Yeah.
He's all stern, right?
Yeah. But imagine if we in this time, these day by day, if we could get these records. And I got to believe that nobody could be successful in destroying every record that's out there. If they destroy all the records, you're destroying the ability of the Clinton Foundation to defend itself. So that's not going to be a very good thing. Because the Clinton Foundation has to, if in a real investigation, they have to say, we're going to go back to the beginning and we're going to demonstrate we were always lawfully organized and operate. Here's what we did. Here's our first board meeting. Oh, we don't have that. Here's this. Well, we don't have that. Here's the legal. Oh, don't have that. Here's the audit. Don't have those. You hear a construction bill. Lost that. Valuation for the. Don't have that. I mean, you're not going to win it. So if we go to the next page. All right. Then we get, if the January 27th, 1998 thing is interesting. That's when Hillary does her interview. She says there's been a vast right-wing conspiracy against her, right? And then on the 29th, they get their determination letter from the IRS for a fraud, a complete fraud, right? Because the relationships among these people, Vernon Jordan had been out there convincing allies of the Clintons that they needed to give Monica Lewinsky yet another no-show job so she would shut the F up and not implicate Bill Clinton.
That's total mafia style, by the way.
And they do get Lewinsky to sign a false affidavit.
Ooh.
If you go back, actually, I skipped over that.
That's perjury.
Yeah. Before that. Yeah. Lewinsky files an affidavit in which she denies ever having a sexual relationship with President Clinton.
Whoa. How come she didn't get in trouble for that?
She did get in trouble with that.
I don't remember that part.
And that's the leverage that Ken Starr had over her. But they didn't take it as far down the line as they should have taken it. So we go back into this question of you need bylaws, right? Here's the actual text from the law. And the bylaws can't contain provisions that are inconsistent with law, i.e. illegal, or what's in the Articles of Incorporation, right? So here's some periods that we can look at. For the 62-day period from the 23rd of October to 97 to 23 December 97, they were incorporated, but they didn't have any bylaws. a real IRS would have said, you're not organized, you cannot have adopted bylaws on the date that you put in the application to be a tax-exempt entity when you didn't have an employer identification number on that date. You weren't an organization. You failed the organization
They
test.
can't adopt a puppy with this paperwork, Charles.
Exactly. And then their lawyers submit a false and materially misleading application signed by Rutherford, which doesn't explain David Pryor's partisan activities on behalf of the Clintons. It doesn't explain Ann Jordan's connection through her husband to Vernon Jordan. It doesn't explain the fact that the biggest contributor to the Clinton Foundation in the first year they file is a committee that Ann Jordan chaired with Terry McAuliffe.
Oh.
It doesn't explain any of that.
What was that committee?
That's the second presidential inauguration committee. And so then they operate this thing for 107 days from the 29th of January 98 through the 15th of May, and they say, you know what, we're not going to file a tax return. We're not going to do that because now we're in the height of trouble. This is before Starr's work is finished. We can't file a tax return on this. If we did that, we would, we're going to definitely lose.
How come people didn't demand Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation's tax returns like they are Trump's?
Well, then was then, right? It's a different period. And so then you get this period from the 15th of May when they haven't filed a tax return through the date he's impeached, a 219-day period. There's no information about this Clinton Foundation and how much money would have been raised, how much money was pledged, how much money out of that money was spent to intimidate witnesses, to pay off lawyers. None of this stuff is disclosed. Then there's another 56-day period from the impeachment until the finishing of the trial, where Bill Clinton gets off. And in this crucial period, there's no reporting on the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, which would have been the obvious mechanism to get people who wanted a tax deduction to support an embattled president to route money towards this fraud. So it began in fraud. It was organized in fraud. It should be called the Clinton Fraud Foundation. Well, let's go to the next page. All right. So we scroll forward to the 28th of April, 2005. That's the date they file an absurd certificate of amendment of their articles with the Arkansas Secretary of State. On the face of it, it is absurd. In the beginning of it, it says that the form says that the entity filing, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, is duly organized and lawfully created. No, it's not. It's never filed an IRS return for any period through the date that they filed this amendment that was remotely true or accurate. They'd never filed a single state filing that was true or accurate. The audits that they hide, they're not in the Clinton Foundation, but that we got, have this language you love that's in red here, basically saying the statements are not intended to present financial position or changes in net assets in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. In other words, we intended to fuck this up. Why do I love that? It's just, we intentionally fucked this up.
That's almost like lawyer-ish language to obfuscate it, right? It feels like some official statement, so it must be okay.
Yeah, but it's absurd.
Yeah.
And it's not even written correctly in accountant speak. It should have said presented on the modified cash basis method of accounting. They leave method out. It's not even in good English. The certificate of amendment should have, they just changed sloppily, and we've done this, explained in this previous show, they changed sloppily the name. They said the name shall be. Well, what is the name on the date you make the change? I mean, you should say the name is.
That's more lawyer stuff.
And then what they needed to do was there are other sections of the Articles of Incorporation that still refer to corporation and refer to the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. So they didn't clean it up properly. They're supposed to, we're going to show you, supposed to attach what are called conformed Articles of Incorporation. All they did is send in sort of a certificate that just says, we're going to change this sentence. You're supposed to, once you change that sentence, you're supposed to redo the whole document. And here's the whole document with the change I intended in the whole new document. That's called a conformed Articles of Incorporation. They didn't do that. And they don't seem to have told the IRS in this time frame, by around April 28th, 2005, they don't seem to inform the IRS that they changed the name of the entity. And they didn't ever amend the bylaws to explain that they changed the name. So you're at a place now, you don't have this new thing. The William J. Clinton Foundation doesn't have bylaws. Without bylaws, it's not an organization.
Is that bad?
It's bad. And then none of this, we have this down at the bottom here, they fooled the FBI. Okay, because they changed, by 2005, they changed the name of the thing, in theory, if it had been done properly, from the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation to the, uppercase T, William J. Clinton Foundation. The summary that's on the FBI vault is right here. The FBI says these files relate to William J. Clinton Foundation. There was no such entity.
But the FBI, in writing a report, could use some shorthand reference to the thing, no?
No, the FBI should do it properly. This makes our point here, that
they confuse it by having all these different names, and then the FBI
And
is
even the
referring to something that's not even a thing.
Right. And so the name William J. Clinton Foundation was not supposed to be used outside of Arkansas as a fictitious name until the 8th of July, 2008.
Charles, this hammers home one point about lawfare that I've raised many times. These people who use alternate names, and frankly, you were the most adamant supporter of the policy to not deal with people using fake names. And for the most part, I have adopted that policy, but it just obscures who they are, confuses where they are, how to contact them, what their official legal... you're always Charles Artell, I'm always Jason Goodman. There's no screwing around.
That's right. That's as it should be.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next page. All right. So what was right about the 2005 Clinton Foundation public filings?
I'm going to go with nothing.
You got it. Right. They file it under...
There's a murder happening in the hallway.
Let's hope not. They file the 990, the annual report with the IRS, using the name William J. Clinton Foundation, which was not a thing. That was not close to being a name. The auditors, the dim bulbs at BKD in the dim bulb auditing department, issue the audit to William J. Clinton Foundation, Inc., no such entity. Let's not hit these links, but I just want to explain that the Clinton Foundation website that puts out what they say is their 2005 990 an audit, but the version of the Clinton Foundation 990 is not the one that they filed with the IRS. And I can show you, then this is the version they filed. This is the version, they filed the one that's missing the amended bylaws that are all wrong. They file that one in New York State. They file the same thing in California. So there are multiple examples of them filing false and materially misleading, corrupted documents with regulators across state lines using the mail. These are all crimes. But the real one is here with ProPublica, and let's just spend a minute and go through that a little bit so people can take a look at it.
Whoops, it came all the way over here. Hang on a second.
This ProPublica site was set up by Herb Sandler and his wife.
Now wait a minute, that guy's in the...
He's still dead.
But wasn't he in the John Podesta emails a lot?
Yeah. So this is something good that they did. But if you hit this Bill, just in here, just put Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. Bill, comma, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton, and see what comes up. You should be able to, and then hit search. Put ampersand instead of, yeah. Yeah. All right, so you get to this, then click this one, then go to 2005. All right, here. And then you'll get, and hit download, I think, this will be faster.
Okay.
Upper right on the page. See it?
There, I got it.
Okay. All right, now go about, I don't know. See, this is received November 8th, 2006. And if you go down the page, here it's dated 10/27/2006. Remember that, 10/27/2006. That's when this thing is dated. Keep going, and then you go down the page, sort of towards the end. I'd say down 50 pages in. They file the bylaws because you're supposed to file with the IRS. I guess further up.
What
further
page are we
down.
on?
Yeah, that's only 20 pages in. You want to be on like page 45 or something. There we go. All right, now keep going up to the very, look at the very top. They file this in 2006, November 8th, 2006. They file a document saying, here is our amended and restated bylaws for something called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, and they changed the name of that April 28th, 2005. So they're still bumbleheads. They're filing something here saying that the new amended and restated bylaws for this entity are for something whose name had been changed. And who was the knucklehead who did this? So if we go down the page here, but 20 pages in. It is our friend.
Bruce Lindsay.
No.
David Kendall.
The former president of the Hemorrhoid Cream Company, Andrew M. Kessel.
Kessel. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Was he the president of the Hemorrhoid
Yeah.
Cream Company?
So they adopt this, and this looks to me, does this 25? Is it 26? His handwriting is supposed to be typed. All right? And it's supposed to be signed by, it should really be adopted by a quorum of the trustees at this time, of which Andrew Kessel was not a trustee in 2005, or ever, as far as I could tell. So this is a crude attempt to say, yeah, we did amend our bylaws the same day we changed our name, but they only filed this in November 8th of 2006 with the IRS, and this version is not on the Clinton Foundation website, it's not on the New York State website, it's not on the California website. Now let's go back into the paper and let's look at the Clinton version. Now note, here the audit that is filed here is for something called William J. Clinton Foundation, Inc., whose bylaws read the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. So there's this craziness. Go about 20 pages in, and you get to the first page of the 990, and we'll look at the date. Remember, it was October 27th, 2016 is the date that is on the ProPublica one. What is this date?
No,
December 20th, 2006. Now, why is that significant? What happened in 2006 in November? There was an election that Hillary Clinton needed to win.
Senate.
She needed to get reelected because she wanted to run for president, and it would not have worked very well for her to lose that election like Beto the idiot, and then say, I'm qualified to be president. We see what happens when a loser for Senate tries to become president. That wasn't going to be a thing. So she couldn't let this mess come out prior to the election, Senate re-election, otherwise she'd never had a chance to be a presidential candidate. But more important in this time frame was what we're going to talk about with our good friend Fabien Chalandon in a few weeks, is the Unitaid money was coming together. The idea here was, my working theory is the Clintons saw in Unitaid the mother lode, the weapon that would get her elected president, this vast pot of money that was going to come from Switzerland towards the Clinton Foundation that didn't legally exist, that can be diverted then to fund her campaign and give her a huge leg up against anybody who might challenge her. So the fact that they would, on their main website, have somebody, and it had to be BKD, produce this forgery. They're supposed to put on their website versions of the 990s that they did in fact file with the IRS. This is a specially concocted version that excludes the crucial piece of incriminating evidence, the amended and restated bylaws. They're not in this filing. Somebody took the time and effort to remove them from the middle of the actual filing, both on the Clinton site and in the key electoral states of New York and California and their regulatory sites. So, I mean, that didn't happen by accident. Here's Kessel has got a lot of explaining to do. Bruce Lindsay's got explaining to do. The accountant who signed off on this, who allowed their signatures to be associated with this, they've got a lot of explaining to do. And if you had the same tough type of questioning that Mr. Corsi endured and that others have endured under Mueller and under the corrupt reign of Mueller, and frankly, it would seem of Wray, if you had the type of questioning that you should apply to the many functionaries at BKD and the law firms and inside these Clinton charities, you would dry clean, you would schedule their interviews at their convenience at Guantanamo Bay with a one-way ticket,
Yeah.
So let's go back into...
They could reopen Abu Ghraib.
Right. So there are other problems with this. The 990 includes in 2005 Bush-Clinton-Katrina cash, but it's not clear how the Clinton Foundation had any authority to raise that money. And the 990 for the Clinton Foundation excludes this HIV/AIDS fighting thing, which it should have included. The merger, we've talked about it before, is preposterous on its face. The legal structure is crazy land. There is no way that they could have merged these two things lawfully. The accounting is worse. But again, in this period here, the entities named, who supposedly changed their names, did not have bylaws. From April 28th, 2005 to November 8th, a period of 559 days. From April 28th, 2005 to 8 July, when they try to change their name again, 1,167 days, no bylaws. From the 8th of July 2008 to the 9th of April, where they changed their name to Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation, no bylaws in the name of anything called William J. Clinton Foundation, no state filings done properly, no nothing. From the 9th of April 2013 through the 2nd of November, that's a 207-day period where this Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation has no bylaws. And then from the 2nd of November 2013 to the present, a 2,249-day period where the bylaws that are in the public domain flatly are out of compliance with applicable rules. It puts control of this purported public charity in the hands of Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton personally. It gives them a proprietary interest in a public charity. It's absurd, right? And so here's the FBI, here's Rosenstein, here's Mueller, here's Comey, here's the IRS, here's a whole bunch of legislators allowing people who either were president of the United States, who might have been president of the United States, who were president of the United States in the case of Obama, cover up this massive fraud where something that was supposed to house the presidential records of the Clinton Foundation is not a charity. It didn't even try to be a charity, and is doing its level best to make sure the public at large and the innumerate idiots in the mainstream press don't do the work that they should do to get to the bottom and put dimensions around this massive crime. You let Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State, go after the Trumps for $2 million, and here we're talking about billions. And it doesn't come close to meeting the guidelines. I mean, this is not a case of, honest, we made problems. How could you expect us to know we did this wrong? We're not lawyers. Oh, we are lawyers. It's
We're
absurd.
not accountants. Oh, we are accountants.
Yeah, exactly. And so at the beginning of this form, the Second Amendment of the Articles, it starts by saying, the William J. Clinton Foundation, a corporation duly organized and existing. No, it wasn't duly organized, and it didn't exist under and by virtue of the laws, any of the laws of Arkansas. And by the way, presiding officer director, Bruce Lindsay, was not the presiding officer director because there were no bylaws that explained how the thing was going to be run. It says here as well, in the filing requirements, that when you file stuff with the Secretary of State, you've got to be accompanied by a conformed copy, just to avoid this thing. You've got to, when you make a change like this, you don't give them a portion of the document. You say, here are the amendments I made, and here's the new document with all the amendments reflected. Had they gone through the bother of doing this, they would not have had any of these problems. Somebody would say, hey, Bruce, you can't do what you did. It doesn't work. I mean,
Sure
what kind of a
can.
lawyer are you? You get your JD from the law school of crap?
Cracker Jacks
Yeah, I mean,
in the
right.
box.
So this is just when you look at it, when you get, and I'm not a lawyer, but when you look at it and you talk to lawyers about it, you come back and you say, this thing is a fiction from the beginning. It's a fairy tale. It's a bad fairy tale. It ought to have a horrible ending for all the people involved in it. So let's go through a working theory. We'll close quickly with a working theory that I have here about what was really going on.
Sure. What was really going on? Shenanigans.
Next page.
Oh, I thought that was the last page.
No.
Oh, there we go.
Funny you ask about the working theory.
Yeah.
So I think what happened here, if we go into Williams and Connolly, let's pull up this Yabaho, David Kendall, and let's see if there's anything at all surprising about his own, this is his definition of his career.
Caps.
Look at the first sentence.
David Kendall has had a checkered legal career. Why would he say that?
Keep going.
His acquaintance with the legal process began when he was arrested several times, but convicted only once in Mississippi during the summer of 1964 while attempting to register voters. Okay, well, so he's arrested for civil rights stuff.
I'm sorry. There's certain things,
No,
you
don't open with that. Oh, he's a Rhodes Scholar. Oh.
and a graduate of what?
Yale. Is he a Skull
Yale
and
Law
Bonesman?
School. No, that's only for undergraduates.
Did he go at the time that Bill Clinton
He
went?
was slightly before you.
Oh, so he's like fraternity bound to
Right.
protect Bill Clinton.
Right. So you look at this, and it's not. Yes, back in the '60s, in 1964, I was 8 years old. I was concerned about
You
where,
weren't getting arrested, Charles.
not yet, and I was concerned about where I could get the next plastic model of an aircraft carrier and put it together, that kind of stuff. But this guy, it's not, and this firm, it's not like you look at. This is nothing I wrote. This is somebody around him, wrote this, or he wrote it himself, thinking he's going to brag about this. And aren't I great? I begin my first sentence. I've had a checkered legal career. Thank you very much. That's why I'm not going to read the rest of this.
Well, I mean, exactly. There's another way to convey that he was an advocate for civil rights without. I mean, there are a number of PR red flags right there. Like, who the hell? They need a copy editor.
Well, no. But what he's telegraphing here, and the Clintons are telegraphing, is look
I'm
for the
open
little
for crime.
for the little people who have you guys have to obey within the confines of the law. We're a super law firm. We're criminals, and you probably are criminals too. That's why you're hiring us. And that's why you're going to overpay us, because we're going to make sure that you stay out of jail being a criminal.
By criminals, for criminals, and of criminals.
Yeah, I mean, this is just amazing. There are no grown-ups at this place. So if you go back into it, now, through his partner, a Williams and Connolly partner, we look at this fellow, Bob Barnett. And let's go down the page a little bit. Further down. All right, stop right here. Bob is one of the premier authors representatives in the world. Remember that Pearson $65 million deal?
Yeah.
Bob Barnett.
Right.
Okay, and who are his clients? Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, W. Bush. James Patterson doesn't really need to use him. He's one of the top
But
spy
he's
novels.
super connected to Bill Clinton. Wrote that.
Oh, not super connected. It's just
He wrote that
I know
book,
about
The President
Epstein.
is Missing. He wrote the book about Epstein,
Right.
Filthy Rich,
Right.
saying that there was a trading floor on the plane, which I don't think there was. It was something else.
well, he's he's I know the CEO of his company, and I know his former next door neighbor in
James Patterson.
Yeah, in Palm Beach is a friend of mine. But anyway, so you look at this, and this list alone is telling me Mitch McConnell's getting book deals, Jake Tapper, a number of these
Whoa.
people, Laura Bush, Bob Woodward, all these people, Sarah Palin, even Sarah Palin's getting book
Can
deals.
she write?
And Dick Cheney, I don't know, the jury's out on that. But Ben Bernanke, Nick Yale, et cetera. So this is
Ben Bernanke.
this is Jack Welch, GE. I mean, this is a bipartisan swamp merchant, I think, who is getting above market deals for politicians, in the case of W. Bush and Laura Bush and Barack and Michelle and others. The level of pay here is impossible to defend. And again, this needs, we want to regulate every publicly traded company. Elizabeth Warren would like to regulate everything. The people, the climate crazies would like now to eliminate single-family home ownership, because that's a potential damage to the planet.
What do you mean? You want two people living in two families living in a
You
house?
should be able to make the decision that you want to occupy space of your own. That's the kind of, you're not qualified to, because the that's looming to the planet is so great.
Barack
Only
Obama
we,
has 5 houses, but you can't have
yeah,
one.
only we who understand the threat posed by climate change can decide how you should live. There's no overreaching with that thinking. Anyway, so you have Bob Barnett at Williams and Connolly able to say, all right, journalist Jake Tapper, you're not making that much money, perhaps you have an expensive lifestyle, you want to get an above market book deal, the one way that's going to make a lot of sense for you to do that is to not investigate the Clinton Foundation, which is the primary means by which the Clintons and we have been operating the swamp for this long. You certainly can't, you need to have an interview with Charles Ortel on June 2nd, 2016 in your offices and suggest to him that you're going to take this seriously, tape him for 45 minutes, and then just send that right over to the Clintons so that they'll know June 2nd, 2016 what they should defend themselves against.
Right.
So that also Comey can get you a letter before, well before the election, so that we have a prayer of actually rigging the election. That's what you got to do. So let's go back into the, so I think that it's extremely odd here that while George W. Bush was president, that they had this long-running investigation starting in 2001 through 2004, and for some reason, if we go to that link, we've done this before, but if we pull up the document, here's something that's quite interesting. Now, I don't know whether we don't, because this is the only piece here. If we go back up the page a little bit, this is a subpoena to testify, asking for documents to testify in New Orleans.
Oh, Hale Boggs, federal building. It's ironic. I've always heard that Bill Clinton drove Hale Boggs to the airport where his plane then crashed.
Is that right?
That's what I've heard.
Well, you go down here. This thing has got a special agent, phone number, fax number identified. You got a clerk there. It's dated December 4th, 2009. It's the first page in this William J. Clinton Foundation. So what was this grand jury? Who opened a grand jury by December 4th, 2009? And what were they looking into?
Yeah.
Because this is the first I've heard of it. I mean, I've seen this before, but I've seen no additional information. This is only a 3-part file. There has to be masses of information that the FBI has. What are they covering up here? Let's look at, so this is after Barack is in. This is as the Clinton Foundation is trying to reorganize itself. This is as the FBI is ramping up against Ranbaxy. What were they doing in the Eastern District of Louisiana, where, as far as I know, the Clinton Foundation doesn't have anything going on? Was it possibly Uranium One? I mean, who knows what this is about?
Well, Arkansas and Louisiana are kind of like New York and New Jersey. There's a lot of like cooperation.
Kind of is the key word.
Well, I mean, like when I was there would be advertisements for like Toyota dealerships in the Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas.
Yeah.
Kind
In
of.
fact, there's a company called Arkla.
Arklatex, right? They spoke about.
Well, no, Arkla was.
But I mean, this like car sort of thing. Like there's the tri-state area: New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut.
But if this is the first page, so there's questions for the crowd and questions for the FBI and questions for Barr and questions for any serious investigators. What was really going on? You've got a grand jury impaneled.
Oh, was Barr? No. Who
No,
was the attorney?
Barr
Ashcroft was the attorney.
I'm saying for Durham and whatever. What was the FBI looking at? They got a grand jury, for Christ's sake. All right, so that means
Against a former president.
Yeah, for the second time.
That's a pretty big deal.
All right, we don't know anything about this. This is while Barack Obama is president in his first year. What the hell was going on? This is just as Lois Lerner heats up her crusade with Eric Holder against conservative Tea Party groups, right here. So I would have thought the lawyers of the Tea Party groups would be really interested to find out what was this all about. I'm interested to find out about it. There got to be some loyal FBI people who say, you know what, we sat on this long enough. Let's tell the truth. So if we go to page 500.
Of this document?
Yeah. You'll know of the slides. There are 500 slide. No, I'm kidding. Page 500 of the document.
You're confusing me, Charles. 500.
Just try to keep you on the. It's yeah. There's lots of stuff here for people to pore over. But on page 500, this is a memo to the file explaining that they're going to stand down. That's 503 you're on now. 500. All right, right here. Okay, this is a memo to the file, dated the date that the Clinton Foundation had its opening ceremony, giving a special agent in charge his name, Frederick Snellings, who I think may be deceased at this point. Says this case is still pending. The date they opened an FBI investigation, mature FBI investigation with grand juries impaneled, a white-collar crime squad investigating public corruption, and they're going to open this library in Little Rock. William Clinton is one of the suspects. Hillary Clinton's another.
Nice.
And this is acknowledging the exceptional work performance of somebody during this investigation. If you go down, it says, it was alleged that Mark Rich secretly channeled contributions directly or indirectly to President Clinton and or his presidential library and foundation in exchange for the pardon. As we know, there was no legal entity, right, that was validly
So they
organized.
just basically bought a pardon.
Well, the point is that they didn't do their work carefully enough, and the work was still grinding away years and years later. If you go down the page,
Pink is green.
and it says, here's what we did from February of 2001 through 9/11.
Oh,
They did a lot of work on this. It was disrupted. And then at the very end, despite the likely declination of prosecution, the day they're writing, or the date of this memo, is the same day that the Clinton Foundation is defrauding the National Archives by claiming that on the date that they were making the grant to the National Archives, they were lawfully organized as a foundation when they weren't. They had no bylaws. It made any sense. They had no audits. They were screwing around with HIV/AIDS work that was unauthorized.
how come they didn't redact the special agent in charge?
Because he's dead, I think.
Really?
I'm just guessing.
Why would that make
I don't know why they didn't. But I mean, this is, to me, we know that in the case of Hillary Clinton's mishandling investigation, there is a 37-part file on this. There's just a 3-part file in the case of this William J. Clinton Foundation. There have to be more records than we currently know about. They opened a grand jury. You know, there have to be internal memos of whatever that investigation was in 2009.
He is dead, you're right.
Yeah. Occasionally I am right from time to time.
Now, wait a minute. So, Lieutenant Colonel Snellings was also a graduate of the FBI. Yeah, he died, it looks like, 2011.
Yeah.
I wonder, let's see how he died. Are you interested in that? Maybe
Sure.
he died of an acute case of investigating the Clintons. Saturday morning, Peachtree
Marine.
City. Yep. Maybe he knew Robert Mueller.
He does. He was appointed by FBI Director Robert Mueller, Field Office Special Agent in charge.
Uh-huh. Doesn't say the cause of death, does it?
Maybe at the very end it will.
No. People have to look into that. Doesn't look like he was that old.
No.
Anyway.
So, then we have this, the truths that we've talked about. You know, there was cash for clunkers under Obama. I think we had cash for continued cover-up in the preceded cash for clunkers in June of 2008. This is that meeting where Obama and Hillary meet in Feinstein's living room.
Right. Tri-fi.
Right. And, you know, and Hillary decides to endorse Obama. I don't think, I mean, the Clintons negotiate about everything. I don't think that, you know, she said, you know, this has been a hard-fought campaign, Barack. You know, I'm not somebody who carries grudges.
This coffee's delicious.
Yeah, may the best person win.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to help
I'll
you.
endorse
I don't
you.
want anything in return. I'm just
Yeah.
a loyal public servant. I'm
Right.
not corrupt as hell.
Right.
You know, if you believe that, you ought to go work on the forthcoming Clinton campaign. But
It will happen, won't it?
yeah. So if we go back into the slide, I think there was some kind of a deal cut between the Clintons and the Obamas by June of 2008. And that deal was, we got all this Unitate money and other money you don't want to know about.
We know your birth certificate is fake and that you're a communist and
Right.
a
And-
cocaine-snorting male prostitute.
And we'll let you, you know, be president because anybody can beat, you know, Admiral Queeg McCain. and Sarah Palin eventually. So we know you're going to be the next president, but actually that's an interesting title to have. It's going to mean nothing because any important decisions are going to be made by we, the Clintons, in our own way and in our own time, and you're definitely not going to look into the Clinton Foundation. That's never happening. Right? Something like that happened. And we have here, we have remember this is under George W. Bush's FBI.
Whoop. Sorry, we'll have that in just a second.
It's okay.
Damn it. What is
Persistent. Well, we know from the timeline on Uranium One that the Uranium One project was well along by 2008 when George W. Bush was president and as Mueller had been FBI director beginning September 4th, 2001. So if the Uranium One scandal was so bad, if the threat of Russian ownership and interest in over American supplies of uranium was such a big threat, how come Mueller did nothing about it? And stop for a second. This is a negative article in The Beast. Of course, everything's going to be negative, trying to say that Whitaker had an impure motive to suggest that Huber take a close look at this Clinton Foundation and Uranium One case. I think it's quite the reverse. I think that Matt Whitaker, who ran a foundation, who understands and is a lawyer and is a hard ass.
But didn't he get jammed up for something with his foundation?
Well, he did because he I don't think he did anything incorrectly in the foundation, but he just suggested that given his understanding of foundations, that there was a serious predicate to invest, a reason to investigate the Clinton Foundation. So he was seen as anti-Clinton from the get-go. So we go back in. There's Uranium One issues to think about that people are trying to cover up. There's the question of trying to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and
Blagojevich or whatever.
Blagojevich. We don't have to hit the link, but here's the timeline on that one. And then we have this. This is really interesting, and I know you like these. Let's look at this here, at this WikiLeaks thing. Remember before we've looked at the MOU.
Yeah.
All right? If we hit attachments here, here's another version of the MOU. Okay. And this is the same December 12th thing. And if we go down to the signature page, note that Valerie Jarrett's signature
Color.
here is in blue.
Yeah. And why is that?
Well, did she originally sign it in blue or not? And note the date. This is obviously the 16th.
This looks like scans of something that then this is signed later.
Right, but it is interesting that it is clearly, it's not the 12th. It's not the 16th of December, 2008.
Why is there no line here and there's a line here? This
Yeah.
looks like they're super into digital forgery in Barack Obama's presidency is
Right.
what it looks
Well,
like.
this is before he's president.
But even so, he
Right.
knows the same people. Where's the line? Why is there no line?
Right. So now if we go back, this is the one that's found.
I'll tell you something else. Why are these JPEG artifacts around the blue thing looking like they're gray? They should be blue dots, not gray dots. See these dots?
Yeah.
Something up with this document, Charles.
Yeah, I know. But this is if we go back out of the attachment into the email itself. Okay, this is December 16th, 2008. This is the final MOU signed by Bruce Lindsay that supposedly is seeking her signature. This is dated December 16th, 2008. How could it be seeking her signature and be signed on November 16th, 2008 in blue?
Isn't Katie Johnson a journalist? Who's Katie Johnson?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay, and so let's go back into the slide.
I guess she's not a journalist. But
So that was blue, right?
yeah.
Now let's look at the one that was provided in an FOIA request to, no, you hit it again.
Oops.
Now let's look at the one that Tom Fitton got. Here's the same, this is what he gets pursuant to a FOIA request.
Different font size, isn't it?
Yeah, and look at the signature. Okay, it's not in blue, which could just simply mean that they didn't have color
scanned it.
copying. This also looks really
Well, it doesn't.
funky, doesn't it?
Well,
Obama presidential transition.
it doesn't match the JPEG artifacts of this. See how this has all those dots around it, and this has none.
Right. Yeah.
And also, yeah, this, I mean, it's complicated for me to explain like how this document got this way, but this again looks to me like a document that somebody scanned, messed with the levels histogram to get these letters to be so sort of mushy and smooth like this. Something's up with this document as well.
Right. So, and there's no line as well for that.
Well, that's at least consistent, but this doesn't look like something that was just scanned. This looks like something that was...
But this is provided by the State Department in December of 2013, pursuant to a Freedom of Information. I mean, actually, if you go to the top of this page, you'll see, it says at the top, right? U.S. Department of State, obtained by Judicial Watch via FOIA on the 3rd of December 2013. Okay, so Hillary and Bill and Chelsea have approximately a month experience running the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton corrupt and hopelessly futile public, non-public, fake
But
charity.
that name's a little long. We'll just call it the William Clinton thing.
Slush fund.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, but here's our State Department under Barack Obama and under John Kerry, the not so merry John Kerry, providing this thing, which is either a real version or not a real version of what they had. Now let's go to, this is, you've seen two versions so far. Go back into the slide. Okay, here's the official version that was provided to senators. Okay, on the 18th, this is provided by Kerry and Lugar, right? And here you see it again.
Well, this looks like what was scanned to give to Tom Fitton.
Well, let's look more carefully at the very end of it. Okay. What date do you see there? There's
12.
no artifacts, as you point out.
Right.
And what date?
Oh, and also, Charles, you know, look at it how, yeah, see, look at how light this is. A scan of this.
And this looks different as well. The Obama Presidential Transition Foundation type looks different. But most importantly, look at the date.
It's 12 now.
Right. Now this is serious because here we're in a moment. This is just like with Trump, Team Trump, history repeating itself and rhyming. Trump wins the election, and the resistance goes out of its way to stop him from being inaugurated by various means and then to challenge his presidency ever since. Barack gets elected. His team is trying to sell his seat. They've got to do a dirty deal with the Clintons. The timeline on this deal makes no sense. Signing it on the 16th of November 2008 is days, like 2 or 3 days after Valerie Jarrett is made head of this transition committee. In no way could she have negotiated for months understanding the Clinton Foundation, which was a complete fraud at that point in time, had nothing right about it. And so there's 3 versions we've provided you of this MOU, which isn't even a legal document to begin with.
Right.
And most importantly, if you go to the first page of this, it's all the same. Note the parties, the next page rather, of the MOU. This agreement is between lowercase the William J. Clinton Foundation. I've told you before, it has no bylaws, no conformed articles of incorporation, no audits, missing tax returns, no information on its government grants. This isn't a legal entity. And here you have the incoming President of the United States saying, anyway, let's just do this MOU and we'll get this across the line.
Plus, he's a lawyer.
Yeah, and we go further down the page, there's communication from our mutual friend, the Schmuck, who you'll keep going down past the end of the agreement. Notice the letter that should be coming. Oh, it's not here?
No.
Oh, well, there's additional information that I don't have here for you, but that is in the file. David Kendall communicating with people, negotiating how Hillary's going to testify. So they get together, and these 2 senators, the senator from Illinois and the senator from New York, are going from being junior senators in the U.S. Senate, representing their respective states, into being the incoming President of the United States and the incoming Secretary of State, and they figure the way to do that best is to lie to the Senate to get her across the line. So let's look at the next page. The final page. This is something I've been looking for a while. I finally found it. This is a lengthy document. This is Hillary's testimony before the Senate. Let's go to page 4, which just page, I think they have it at the bottom of each page. It says what?
So this would be 4, right?
No, this is little 3. It's actual marked 4.
Okay.
What happened?
I don't know. Oh, it crashed. The page has become non-responsive.
Well, on page 4, wow.
Oh, snap.
Go back. We'll get it.
This part here, it seems to not be happy about.
Well, it's in this part where, if people can read it and go back and get it, talks about Lugar's concerns. He's the senior or the minority.
This page is crashing Chrome.
All right. Well, it could just be that it's too much information or whatever. But if people in their free time want to look at this, you'll see that page 4 begins an explanation of Lugar. Of Lugar explaining his various concerns about the Clinton Foundation. And if he had had a real staff and a real inclination to do anything about this, the first question he should have been asking is William J. Clinton Foundation a thing? Is it actually a foundation? Because if it isn't, what the hell are we concerned about here? I mean, we don't have to regulate anything. It's not a foundation. We've got to go down, open box A, not box B. Box A is, hello, Department of Justice, FBI, put these fuckers in prison. Forget about Secretary of State. Forget about President of the United States. These people have been conspiring since June of 2008 to make sure that the fraud of the Clinton Foundation would continue to stand out there as a vehicle to finance the crooked aims of these people, and then serve as a template for Barack and Michelle to go ahead and do the same freaking thing as they've been doing ever since. So we've gone on a little bit longer than normal, but...
Well, that's okay. Oh, yeah, we have. Well, I got to get this uploaded because we were unceremoniously yanked. It's very strange, Charles. Since the stream cut, we haven't had that audio problem again, and I haven't touched anything here that's physically connected to the audio. It is interesting that the network and the audio come through the same, well, I don't want to say too much, but I wonder if there's some ability to disrupt that from the outside. I have no explanation as to why that happened or why it stopped as soon as the show was taken off air.
Very interesting.
It is, but we'll persist. We'll put it out as soon as I'm able to download it and re-upload it. And again, there was an announcement made last night that I'll do a separate video about that basically was saying that the operation to disrupt Crowdsource the Truth was going to be intensified, and perhaps that's what we're seeing right now. So the best way for people to help us counteract that is to become a sponsor on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. There's a ton of sponsor exclusive content on there, and heading into 2020, it's going to be very important that we have everybody's support so that I can keep bringing programs to you, even the free programs like Sunday with Charles. If you're watching every week and you're not a sponsor, that's not the right way to do it. So thanks for watching, everybody, and Happy New Year. We'll see you next year. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for watching, everybody.